Baba Ramaphosa, Recombera Baba, Recombera Nitsa Chipon, Bocundero Riskia and Shumas Nevasa. La Fizolito, La Fizolo Tabo Metiposa, Yam South Africa and the Sir Ramaphosa, Bashali, I hope so get corruption say bona. Glamalanga, izinto safana kudala. Umzansi somestafe na doubt ukuthi lisekhona ithemba nekusasa. Irandi liyawa, uRamaphosa waphatha. Abahlala basenamandla, bafisa nathi abafudanga. Sibona amanyala there's a lot of political drama. Isimali kuyaphiswana. How many millions ayende commission engabhadlanga? Ngoba nje uliwa nama-freedom fight. Eish! Bemkhambule wayevumbana. Yes, yafuna manje kwathiwa Slava. Akusho mina kusho abantu bathi akabuyi ungamalala. Vele la Mzansi sekuhlale kumnyama. Load shedding ekuseni ntambama. Petrol ukudla sekukhuphuka amawala. I-350 Ramaphosa uyayivala njengamathanda. Basically, abahlazi bakhuluma umathanda. Bapoliticize ngempi yaseRussia. Angithi bacabanga ukuthi asifundanga. Yikho besitshela mana. Baba Ramaphosa. Obulaya bathu manikana isela lockdown rafangandara utoba chileni cha white monopoly capital ya South Africa and the Sir Ramaphosa bahlali I hope so get corruption sayibona. Baba,
good evening and welcome to this version and edition of In My Crosshairs. In this Twitter space on popular demand from the previous time, last Wednesday, when we discussed stepping aside and where there was primarily a concentration on the issues around President Cyril Ramaphosa and the Pala Pala farm shenanigans and scandal, we decided to proceed with a Twitter space that will lead on from there. My name is Carl Niehaus. Tonight I have again with me my co-moderator Tebu. I've also invited Advocate Dalian Poffo again to join us, and I see Advocate Poffo is already here on the Twitter space with us. I've also asked Professor Siepe, who has written extensively about this issue of President Ramaphosa and the Pala Pala farm scandal, and today also wrote a very interesting and insightful article about the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. It was published in the Sunday Independent under the title, "The Commission is a useful distraction for South Africa's pressing problems." I would like to ask Advocate Poffo to please request to become a speaker, and I will look out also for Professor Siepe to join us. Let me remind us that we said today's discussion is not going to cover the ground that we had already covered during the discussion on last Wednesday, but we will try to concentrate on what has come out since then, and specifically, because that was the request from the participants, specifically on the why and the how President Ramaphosa has to go under the current circumstances. I would like to invite my co-host, Tebu, to make some introductory remarks, and I see Advocate Poffo has now activated his mic, and after that, we will then hand over to Advocate Poffo as one of our guests to make his remarks, and I'll continue to look out for Professor Siepe to also join us. Once again, my thanks to every one of you who take out time on this Father's Day to come and participate with us. Let me acknowledge the two songs that I played at the beginning. I played Serenade by Louis Hayes, a serenade that he dedicated to his father. It's a song that I love because it also reminds me of my own dad, who sadly had passed on. And then secondly, and I saw some responses from you by laughing and setting up hands, there was a song specially produced and written for this Twitter space of today by Nkwenka from Jozini. The title of that song, Ramaphosa Must Go. I thought it was a nice touch, and I thank Comrade Nkwenka for having specifically produced this song. Comrade Tebu Khadima, I hand over to you as our co-moderator for your opening remarks, and after that, we will immediately move on to Advocate Dalium Poffo. Tebu, the mic is yours. Tebu, can you hear me? Can you please activate your mic so that we can hear you? Thank you. Tebu, your mic is once again muted. Can you please activate it? Thank you.
Good evening, Bangazita. I think my microphone had gone off there, and good evening to Advocate Mpofu SC, as well as Professor Siepe and everybody else who has joined, taken time, important time to join this very important discussion. It is important that we continue in this discourse, but to find solutions, or rather measures that can help us to save our country from total collapse, because we are indeed on a precipice where we are to be a failed state and we don't have any more time. And I think, as you have mentioned, that it's important for us to not repeat what we have discussed on last Wednesday, but to now look forward and say, what are we to do? But more so based on that what we thought was a concentrated, or rather an event only limited to Palapala, it appears that the rot has gone much more wider based on the allegations that have since come up, where it appears that there was a deliberate cover-up, not only by the law enforcement, specifically the South African police, but they themselves have been complicit in not only the cover-up, but in actually committing criminality. And that should worry every one of us when you can have none other than the law enforcement agents themselves now alleged to have been complicit in criminality or having committed criminal acts. And I think that is why the debate is more so important, but also the fact that the Department of Justice, no less, they too appear to have been party to the cover-up. So it appears that, if anything, the rot is much more wider, and therefore, as South Africans, we are rightfully alarmed. We are rightfully having to hold a follow-up discussion, but we must hold the follow-up discussion with the view of how do we effectively redeem our country from what are evil forces that are going to rob us of anything and everything that we've been promised in terms of our constitutional scheme. So with those words, I'll leave it there, but we look forward to the input that we can then take forward to find solutions. Thank you very much, Mbagazit.
Thank you, Tebu. I think what is shocking is what we learned in the last couple of days since last Wednesday, also from the police department in Namibia. The kind of interactions that there were with the South African police service, or the lack thereof, in the light of the fact that the South African police service never had officially a complaint laid with them, and yet there were actions taken in order to illegally abduct and move that person who was abducted to South Africa to be interrogated and tortured. I want us also, in the discussion that we are going over now with Advocate Dalium Poffo, to concentrate on what kind of legal actions, but also political mobilization as a people in South Africa we can undertake in order to make sure that we address these serious crimes that have been committed, and specifically make sure that we address the need for Cyril Ramaphosa to go. You will remember that when Advocate Poffo participated with us on last Wednesday, he was very clear about the need for us to take decisive action and urged us to do so. Advocate Poffo, I'm handing over the mic to you for your initial remarks. In the meantime, can I request Professor Siepe to please request to speak so that I can identify him and also allow him to come in after you. The mic is yours, Advocate Poffo.
Thank you very much, Comrade Carl and Comrade Siepe, and everyone, Prof, everyone who's here. I can recognize a few names. Yeah, I think let me start by saying this, just to take off where Siepe left it. This is obviously a follow-up of the story that we dealt with on Wednesday evening. So some of the people who are listening might be repeat offenders, so to speak, and so they'll have to forgive us if we cover some of the ground that we covered. But I think it's important for all of us to try not to repeat so much what we already covered, but to take the debate forward to another level. But inevitably, we're going to have to recap on some of the things that we discussed on Wednesday. Unfortunately, I haven't had time to listen to the rest of the recording after I left on Wednesday, and so again, forgive me if I cover some of the ground that was covered after I signed off. But again, I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, because a debate by its nature, involves a bit of repetition and recapping but trying to move the debate forward. Yeah. So basically, this is what those who are in the journalistic or that type in the media industry would call this what is known as a developing story. So inevitably, there are things that happened between the last time we spoke on Wednesday and now, as Tebu correctly pointed out, and some of those things are quite significant, and I will deal with them. But let me start by just going back a little bit to what I had said on Wednesday. After summarizing everything, I came to the climax, if you like, of what I was saying, was that we have to trigger the accountability mechanisms that are at our disposal as citizens. And I mentioned 5 of those, which were the Parliament, the NPA, Public Protector, the police, and I said the most important of those is the 5th one, which is the people. After all, even the other 4 are, in theory, accountable to the people. So there's a level at which we have to go beyond the obvious, certainly beyond political party affiliations, beyond the factions in the ANC and all that. All those things are part of the mix, by the way, make no mistake. But this is a crisis moment that, in my estimation, goes much beyond that and requires all of us as citizens, as anybody who cares about the future of this country for our children and their children, now needs to stand up and try, difficult as it is, to look beyond our straight-jacketed religious or political affiliations and see this as a national crisis, a crisis of leadership, a crisis of politics, and a crisis within the ruling party, which obviously affects us even if we don't belong to that party. Okay, so with that background, I'd like to jump quickly to the latest developments. I've got quite a number of points to make, but I believe more in interaction. So some of the points I will make them when I respond to people rather than a one-way discussion. So I'll only make what I consider to be the most important points now, and then I'll sneak my other points in when I respond to points of clarification or questions or debate or disagreement or whatever, which is more important than just listening to one person. Okay, so let's go to the latest developments, or the most significant latest development. Since Wednesday, one of the things that has happened was the release by the Namibian government or the Namibian police of the statement that came out. And it revealed something quite significant, which shows that the rot goes wider and much deeper than we anticipated. I'm going to assume that everyone read that statement that was released by the Namibians. By the way, let me just pause by saying this. You know, anyway, if you know anything about crime, whether as a criminologist or as a lawyer or just as someone who reads crime novels or watches crime movies, you will know that there's always a weakness. Any crime that is committed, you can commit it in the dark and, you know, in a lonely place in a desert. But there'll always be some clue that a good detective can pick up. It might just be a shoe print, or you drop a piece of hair or something like that. Yeah. But there's always a weakness. And I dare say that for Mr. Ramaphosa, the biggest weakness in this particular case, which I'm sure he didn't bargain for, is called one thing. It's called Namibia. And I'm quite sure that that's the one angle that he didn't bargain, because it brings a whole lot of unexpected problems for him. One is that the Namibian media is covering this story unlike the captured media in this country, just like any other story. The second one is that in the Namibian parliament, the issue is being raised, including by the EFF in Namibia and other opposition parties. And so far, they've been allowed to raise the issue without being assaulted or anything like that. And then the most dangerous one is the one that I want to talk about, which is the intervention of the Namibian state itself, which obviously wants to absolve itself and to portray itself as not having been collusive in any wrongdoing. So the most important aspect of the Namibian official statement was the revelation that they had actually engaged, well, firstly, that they had met with the South African police officials in the so-called no man's land. Now, that alone is a problem, because how do our police go and meet anybody in no man's land or anywhere in the world when there's no case, no official case in South Africa? That alone is an abuse of state resources. But the biggest one is the fact that the Namibians are now saying that they asked the South African authorities for proof that there had been an official case opened, case numbers, not the usual stuff. What is the case number? Where was the case opened? Which police station? So that they could assist. And that's, to put it mildly, that's when the South Africans kind of disappeared. They never came back to them. And we know now the reason why they didn't, because obviously they didn't have those answers because the thing had never been reported to any police station. Now that says two things. It puts paid to this nonsensical idea that you can just tell your bodyguard about something and then you say you've reported it to the police. Because if that was genuinely a way of reporting a crime, then they would have just told the Namibians the same thing. But they knew that they couldn't say such a ridiculous thing to the Namibians. But secondly, it shows that they knew that there was something wrong with this picture, because they never came back to the Namibians. But more seriously, which is something I've tweeted about, the Namibians say that as a result, and that's a very important thing, as a result of the non-cooperation by the South Africans, then they had to cancel the forfeiture, the asset forfeiture proceedings that they were engaged in. Now, what that means in simple language is that the Namibians, having been suspicious about this money that just was flying around, did what our law enforcement agencies would do, which is to confiscate the proceeds of crime. But because of the South African non-cooperation, they literally had to return those assets to the criminals because they wouldn't have had a legal reason to hold them, unless if South Africa had said, here's the case number, here's the name of the police station, and therefore you must go ahead. So that's a scary thought, if you think about it, because it means that the Ramaphosa syndicate and those people who were torturing people and flying up and down are involved in something much more serious than just some of the things that we spoke about. This is now what I would call a three-dimensional crime. It's a crime in South Africa for all the reasons that we discussed on Wednesday: tax evasion, non-reporting to SARS, Reserve Bank, Forex, just the simple stuff without going into the deep stuff about kidnapping and torture. But it's also an offense in Namibia because they, as I say, they then allowed people to get away with crime, basically, to put it simplistically, in Namibia. But as I mentioned the other day, it's also an international crime because, as we know, the Americans declare any crime that is dollar-based is assumed or presumed to be a crime in America as well. So this is quite a major crisis. And for no less than our president, it would have been a major crisis even if I was involved or any one of us was involved. But if it's our president who's at the center of that three-dimensional crime, then we have a serious problem, which takes us to the political. So the political dimension, because I unashamedly speak here both from the legal point of view, but also from the political. The political, Comrade Carl, is very simple. We must, as a people, indicate that we need answers. We need answers from Ramaphosa. We need answers, and I'm quite happy that even the Ramaphosa mandarins are now saying that we need answers from him. I was shocked to see even the Financial Mail, which is probably the most right-wing rag that you can get, saying things like the timing of Ramaphosa's suspension of the public protector was suspect because she had just announced the investigation. Normally, they would turn a blind eye on such things. So that's where we need to mobilize society. If Cheryl Carolus, of all people, I mean, Ramaphosa's people, saying that he must own up and reveal more to the nation. Right-wing people like Banim Tomboti saying the same thing, Peter Bruce, and so on. So if there is so much consensus, even about just that simple thing, then at least it means there's something that we can work with. Because that's what you need as a political strategist. You have to say, what is the minimum? That's how we fought apartheid. We said we could have our differences. This one was a communist, this one was this or whatever. But we had a basic minimum demand that apartheid must end. So it's the same here, that there's consensus. There seems to be some kind of consensus in society that this guy has not spoken the truth, or he must reveal some more. So we mustn't get into the stuff that divides us. Let's stick to the stuff that we agree on. As I said on Wednesday, for example, let's talk about the Forex thing and not talk so much about the kidnapping, because it's still investigated. So I think that's where the action should be, and I'll stop there just so that we can engage and debate. But I think that this calls into question some of the institutions that have hitherto supported this gentleman: the media, the judiciary, the NPA, parliament, and structures like that. Pressure must then be put into those structures to make sure that they do the right thing. And nobody wants them to do a lynch job or anything like that. They must just do their job. For example, the NPA must simply very soon indicate that they are prosecuting on the easy stuff, or they are not prosecuting, so that other people can do private prosecutions, for example. And so on. Parliament has already explained that it is not going to investigate, which is also ridiculous. But I mean, if even Steenhuisen says that the man must account and come clean, then it means there's sufficient consensus in South African society, at least about just that fact. And therefore, we should organize ourselves into voices that will march or stay overnight and sit in or whatever, just to make those minimum demands about prosecution and getting answers. Thank you. If I may stop there just to stimulate some debate, Comrade Carl.
Thank you.
Before you
Tebu, yes, please proceed.
I just wanted to take on, Poffo SC. He says, this gentleman. Now, it appears to me that we do not have a gentleman, but we have only a wolf that had the patience to wait.
A rogue.
And the wolf that had the patience to wait since 1994. And here we are. Thank you. I just want to put that.
Yeah. No, thank you. No, but on a serious note, Comrade Tebu, what you're saying is important. I think we need to have that debate as well, and I hope that it will feature here. For me, the biggest, there's nothing that makes my blood to boil than this idea of a sanitized Ramaphosa. I always tell people that, one of the ways in which I used to try and shock my white friends before the 2019 elections, or even before Nasrec, was to tell them that Ramaphosa, because they were all horrified by Zuma this, Zuma that. And I said, okay, well, we're all against Zuma, but I can tell you now, Ramaphosa will be 1,000 times worse than Zuma. And you could see, I used to enjoy to see them, their eyes popping out, thinking that I'm totally crazy to even say that. But now I think they always say, well, how did you know that this was going to be like this? Because this guy was just sanitized. I mean, this is the same guy who's called the Buffalo. He's called the Buffalo because he bought a buffalo of 20 million rand in the midst of poverty. So we mustn't pretend to be shocked that, you know, this guy is a monster. This is who he is. What he has revealed is who he is. This is the same person who said that the workers must be butchered in Marikana. This is the same person who's called Cupcake because he was dealing with 9 girls who were extorting money from him or whatever that story was. So it's so that's the reality. So you're quite right. So maybe when we call him a gentleman who are being too polite. So there's nothing. This is the same person that Terra Likota tells us sold student activists in the 1970s and told the police that they had planted communist ideas in his head. So, you know, so you're quite right, Comrade Siepe. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Ali. I took it that when you referred to Ramaphosa as a gentleman, it was done with the necessary sarcasm.
Tongue in cheek.
I had with Cyril Ramaphosa when I worked with him as national spokesperson of the ANC, when he came in from nowhere as the Secretary General of the ANC, and I saw the naked ambition and the anger when he couldn't get what he wanted to get. So this man I've watched at close range. I've seen how he performed during the negotiations. I listened to him in buses when we traveled to remote venues to meet with the apartheid regime negotiators. I gathered how he was not really interested in discussing proper strategy on how to outmaneuver and get the best possible settlement for the people of South Africa. He was at the back of that bus, always busy talking money. He was always busy with business deals. And for Ramaphosa, what he's doing today is a continuation of self-aggrandizement and a continuation of business deals. And that is exactly how it panned out also with this Phala Phala disaster. So it was no coincidence when at the end of our last Twitter Spaces conversation, I referred to him as a rogue. There were some comrades who subsequently contacted me and said, perhaps you've gone a bit too far. And my answer to them was unequivocal. No, I haven't. I should have gone further. I want to give Professor Siepe a chance to come in, and then both Advocate Poffo and Professor Siepe will be able to then participate in this discussion that we're going to have with the many people who have already applied and put in their requests to get the mic. Professor Siepe had some problems with his device, and he's going to connect with us and speak via the device of Kim Heller. I see that Kim had requested for the mic. Professor Siepe, I want to hand over to you now. I did introduce you already by the time before you came in. Advocate Poffo, there's background noises that come from your mic. Professor Siepe, the mic is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Carl, and thank you very much, Advocate Poffo, for your input and Tebu, and I hope I'll be able to piggyback on what has been said. But most importantly, also to underscore the point that Advocate Poffo had actually raised. The need is to now focus on what needs to be done. But I also want to, before even coming to that, I thought it would be good to just give people a sense of a framework in which we need to approach this matter, because there's a history to Ramaphosa. One is, I'll start with one of those famous sayings that when you embark on journey for revenge, you need to make sure that you dig two graves, one for your enemy and one for yourself. And this is actually what is happening. We saw that happening with Mbeki, and it's a strange irony today that it is Ramaphosa who's praising Mbeki, but it will seem that Ramaphosa might face the same, might take the same medicine that he is keen to give to others. Some time back, when Mbeki decided to remove the former president, Jacob Zuma, he argued that there were adverse comments that were made in the courts about the deputy president, then Jacob Zuma. And because of that, he felt that somebody like that cannot remain in government. And Mbeki was actually praised for taking that stance. There was nothing about guilt, it was adverse comments. And at that time, the media was talking about some corrupt and mutual relationship, which the judge had never said. But as history and or karma does things, there were adverse comments that were made by Nicholson about Mbeki. And the ANC felt at that time that given that Mbeki had removed Jacob Zuma on the basis of adverse comments, it is he cannot expect that he'll be treated differently. In the same way that he removed Jacob Zuma because of the adverse comments that were made in court, the ANC removed him. And actually, credit must be given to people like Julius Malema, who insisted that what goes around comes around. Now, we find the same thing happening here. Not so long ago, Ramaphosa was the one who was pontificating and talking about the Gupta emails. And during that time, he was willing to address whoever was willing to listen, and that we must get to the bottom of the Gupta emails. And he spoke to the churches, stadiums, until somebody came out with his own emails. And what did Ramaphosa do? Instead of saying we must get into the bottom of my emails, he rushed to the courts. The same Ramaphosa went again talking about transparency, and they were supported by many other people who talked about transparency being the lifeblood of democracy. You had the organizations like the Right to Know jumping there. You had all these so-called civil rights organization, the Ahmed Katrada, the Mandela Foundation, all of them were echoing the same thing about the issue of transparency, until we heard the stories about the files that relate to CR17. Suddenly, all these groups disappeared. The Right to Know was nowhere to be found. And it appeared like when it comes to Ramaphosa, this country has a right not to know. So effectively, what they're saying that you must dig two graves, one for yourself and for your, seems to be something that will visit Ramaphosa now and then. This holier than now attitude always has what you call, like lies having short legs. Now we talk about the state capture. Again, Ramaphosa was telling us about the state capture. And then the ANC decided in its collective folly that to deal with people they do not like. In the past, the ANC had tolerance for difference. But what we see now in the ANC is that there'll only be one opinion. And as people say, that opinion seems to originate from Stellenbosch. But what is interesting about what we have now about the state capture is that this was pushed and the idea of a step aside was presented to the people. And some of us argued then that people should, if you talk about step aside because of allegations made against you, this is almost saying just because allegations were made against you does not mean that you're guilty. Then the ANC, because the current triumphal destruction of the ANC, because it was of its numbers, said we're not going to start agreeing in the NEC on the basis of consensus. It will now be about the majoritarianism, that we need to vote and not convince the other side because we will not convince them. So you found a position now that was taken where the numbers determined the debates. The steps aside then got in there, and people said, if you are, all you need to do is to charge people, and they understood that they control the machinery of the state, and all they need is to encourage those you have appointed to charge some people, and then they should step aside. Now, that which was digging some people's graves has now come to haunt Ramaphosa. Because whichever way you want to look at the Palapala matter, it is a matter that the NPA cannot avoid. And as the advocate Poffo says, if the NPA chooses not to charge Ramaphosa, then other people, organizations must actually do the same. They must actually force the NPA to say, tell us whether you're willing to go ahead with this matter. But as has been pointed out, what we're dealing with here with the Palapala matter are three levels of attacks. The first one is the issue of constitutionality. Ramaphosa idiotically went out of his way, talking to what appeared to be lobotomized grouping of ANC members, telling them that he did not steal anybody's money. And we know, as a matter of fact, that was not a question on the table. And that, I say, is a telltale sign of somebody who has something to hide when you start answering questions that are not asked. And he said it boastfully, laughing, and it was not a laughing matter. We're dealing with a very serious case. So, but his acknowledgement and public declaration with a smile, and boastfully so, to say he's in a business of selling, in itself violates the Constitution. Section 96 of the Constitution is very clear that the members of cabinet, including the president, cannot be engaged in any paid work. So that is the first thing that can be shown that he has behaved in a manner that is unconstitutional. Then there are issues of criminality that are involved, and also issues of unlawfulness. So, but the first one of the constitutionality is something that is easy to win, because it can be prosecuted and pursued without what he calls due process. But let me also say something about the due process, which was never there 2 years ago. Suddenly he has woken up to the idea of due process. But his lawyers have actually told him that first, hide behind due process for one reason. We do not know what your accusers have. So you can't go around putting your foot in the mouth. So just hide under the notion of due process. But there's something tricky about due process. Saying to the NPA or to the police, they are investigating, and the investigation can take many years. And this is what he wants. He hopes he can hide behind, that the process has not been concluded. And even his sympathizers are beginning to try to find logic in due process, which in simple terms, it means the police will say, we're not ready, we're still investigating. And all he wants is to make sure that come December, he is not charged. Because if he's charged, the very idea that he pushed strenuously with this triumphalist lot will mean that he must step aside. So the long short of it is that the line of attack will not be fought through the numbers in the ANC, because right now people can easily be bought, but is to use the very same step aside that he has pursued. And now that they've pursued that, he doesn't have to be found guilty. that is no longer required for him to step aside. What is required is for him to be charged. So he must, like Mbeki was given his own medicine, Ramaphosa must be given the same medicine. And if members of the ANC were to say, but he's innocent until proven guilty, we'll say, what about the others? There's William Jesus, the ANC Bakashules. So he found himself in a corner. And when somebody is in a corner, this is actually a gift that is given to members of the ANC to deal with this hypocrisy, to say you cannot have it both ways. And what goes around comes around. So dealing with the issue of constitution is very important, but somebody must charge. And that is very easy. It does not require due process. He has already acknowledged that he is moonlighting as a farmer, as somebody engaged in business, and therefore having not paying attention so much to the business of the state. Then the second issue that I would like to raise is the issue of criminality. That when you have suggestions of kidnapping, of torture, which have not been denied, then the president is probably aware that that happened. His silence means that he's also somebody who has condoned what is clearly criminal, and he cannot get away with it. Fortunately, as the advocate Poffo indicates, that we have this matter that is not only transacted or engaged and handled in South Africa, it's also Namibia. You have a president of Namibia who does not dispute the fact that he may have received the call from Ramaphosa. And he's actually in trouble because of the happenings in this country. That in itself is part of the problem, to say, what is it that the president was actually doing when this matter should be handled by the police? So the notion of defeating the ends of justice also comes in. So there are a number of levels in which this can be approached. But what people need to do is to say, what would be the quickest way in which you can deal with this? Because right now it is not about, in the end, the debate that will happen in the court about innocence. So it is about making sure that he also takes position around the issue of step aside. Now, I'd like to close by saying, talking about the making sure that there is focus. When you are given an opportunity, you are not going to fight it in an area of your weakness. I mean, people know the story about the eagle and the snake. That the eagle, when it fights a snake, it doesn't fight the snake on the ground, because the snake will be able to outsmart the eagle on the ground. But the eagle knows that the snake has no stamina, no power in the air. It is useless, weak, and vulnerable. So what you do, you take the snake to a place where it is weak. Now Ramaphosa is in a space where he is weak because of the grave that is dark. And that, for me, is in terms of not only about the ANC politics, in terms of making sure that we get to the bottom of this, but also to make sure that we don't have a rogue president, a president who's willing to destroy other people's lives while he's actually guilty of worse things. But what is most important in terms of putting pressure on the NPA is that the NPA has been very quick to charge people like Carl around some misdemeanor. The misdemeanor that many people had actually been guilty of, including the president, where when in terms of protocols, you found people in the crowd. One must remember that when we had the social unrest, despite their so-called protocols, you saw ministers, including the president, surrounded by people and violating those protocols. But the NPA saw it fit that on something so minor, they could actually charge Carl, who continued to appear in court. But here we're dealing with something more egregious. And the NPA cannot tell us that this matter does not require the same attention and does not require the same amount of energy and the same amount of vigor in pursuing it. So we need to continue to expose these contradictions with the aim of then asking the NPA, are you going to charge Ramaphosa on the basis of these facts that everybody knows that can no longer be denied? And as the advocate indicated, that even his own supporters do not know how to help him. He's trying to say, let us deal with the character of the whistleblower. But my position is very simple. If my neighbors don't like me and I happen to steal a car, the fact that I stole a car and my neighbors are whistleblowers, they may have meant me harm, but it does not mean I've not stolen a car. So all this nonsense about the character of Arthur Fraser is neither here nor there. The issue is, has Ramaphosa violated his oath of office? Has he violated the laws of this country? Has he acted in a manner that violates the constitution? And it is very clear that the answer is yes. But what we need to do is to say, where is the best place to fight him in a manner that the process can be effective and efficient to deliver the outcome? I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Professor Siepe. Before we go over to some of those of you who are here in the Twitter space and who've requested to speak, I want to go back to Advocate Poffo along the lines of what Professor Siepe referred to, and that is, where are the weaknesses and where do we fight Cyril Ramaphosa and this issue? As far as I can see, before you come in, Advocate Poffo, as far as I can see, there's the issues around the international policy and protocols that have been broken with regards to Namibia. And secondly, there is the issue of how we can pressurize the South African Police Service and the National Prosecuting Authority to do their duty and to charge Cyril Ramaphosa. Some of us have gone to police stations. We laid further charges. People have said, but what does it help to lay charges that are somewhat similar to the ones that Arthur Fraser had already laid? The intention was to put pressure on the police, to keep the focus there, and to tell them, look, we're here. We insist that you carry out your duties. Advocate Poffo, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Comrade Carl. Let me start with your specific question before I deal with some of the issues from the Prof. Yes, as I said on Wednesday, my own view is that the clearest fault line is with the police and the NPA. So the NPA in particular. So as soon, the police must be pressurized to hand over the docket. And as soon as that is done, the NPA must make a decision. You know, there's no magic in making a decision to prosecute or not. If I slapped you on the face now and you go to a police station, you know, the following day they're going to come and collect me. And then I can explain, no, it was self-defense or whatever. So it's not, it doesn't have to take weeks or months to make such a decision. Particularly if you consider what I said the other day, that the focus must not be, because the red herring, as the Prof says, is going to be, no, we want to investigate about the kidnapping and the torture and so on. We should say, forget about those things. We accept that you still have to investigate the bigger cases. But let's talk about the stuff that the man has admitted. He should be charged for those crimes that he has admitted. A, that there was money that was taken from his place. B, he did not report that money. He says it was less than 4 million. Fine, doesn't matter. Whatever, but there was money that was taken, and it was not reported to the police. It was in foreign exchange. 4, it was not reported to SARS, and no duty was paid on it. Just those simple things. Remember, we're dealing with the president of a country here. So it's not a question of it's not, if it was you and me, Comrade Carl, having done those things, they have a different complexion. There'll still be crimes, but you did not take an oath in front of the millions of South Africans to say that we are going to abide by the Constitution and obey all laws and all that, which which is what the oath of office says. There's a reason why the Constitution prescribes a particular oath of office for the president, which is different from the oath of office that gets taken by ministers, which is different from the oath of office that gets taken by MPs, which is different from the oath of office that get taken by at different levels by judges and so on. That oath of office was designed by the founders of the Constitution so that it binds a particular person who calls himself the president. So just that simple question as to whether he has breached his oath of office is something that we should be probing. And he might have breached his oath of office just on one of the issues, just on not declaring money to SARS. That's sufficient. Forget about the torture and all those big things. Yeah. So that's where I think we should concentrate on. Similarly to the political parties, I see Mr. Mani is here. They have already put in a committee parliament. Again, they must differentiate these things, because you can be fooled and obfuscated by, as Prof says, by all these supporters of Ramaphosa, because they want to fudge all these things. So the people in parliament must say, we are not the police. We are not interested in looking at all these other things. We just want 1, 2, 3. Did you do A, B, C? And if you did, that's enough for you to face impeachment. Even if you didn't do D, E, and F, we are dealing with this. The public protector, same thing. Public protector is not looking at criminal activity. She has to look at whether the code of ethics that is prescribed, it has been breached or not. Section 96 of the Constitution that the professor mentioned talks about conducting business or doing paid work while you are in office. Has that section of the Constitution been breached or not from the admitted facts? When Ramaphosa says in the Limpopo ANC conference, I was selling animals, isn't that enough just for the breach of Section 96? Whether people were tortured or not is a different question. And so I think that's the strategy that should be adopted, to say, let's forget about the complicated stuff. Let the Hawks deal with that and all those people. But on the admitted stuff, there is enough. If you failed, if indeed proceeds of crime were returned to criminals simply because of the inaction of our government, surely some heads should roll just on that score. And that includes Lamola, that includes Ramaphosa. It might even include Bheki Cele. So they must answer for their parts of the crisis. So I think that, yeah, if I had the power, I would say tomorrow I would march to the Hawks or wherever, and then after that go and sleep for 10 nights outside the offices of the NPA to say that they must charge this man on these simple things, write him up a memorandum, or they must say they're not charging if they don't want to charge, so that we can, as society, take up a private prosecution. Because the Prof is right. You see, politically, the idea is that Ramaphosa knows that he's untouchable and he will not be charged. Because if he's charged, then obviously he'll be vulnerable to the step-aside rule. So that's where the real fault line is. We must make sure that that decision to charge is made, because that's the key to whether or not he should even remain as the president of the ANC or the president of the country. Because obviously, if he has to step aside, he must step aside from the position, the deployed position, quote unquote, of president. And if I may, Comrade Carl, just before we hand over to the audience, just touch on something that the professor spoke about. We must not be waylaid into the narratives that are created by the other side. You know, they say that I had Tulima Dansela and those types of people. They're saying, no, this is just an RET, whatever. I don't care. In fact, we must just assume that. Say, okay, one, let's say Arthur Fraser is an RET deployee or whatever you call it. That's fine, as the professor says. So what? So Arthur Fraser must then be fried for whatever his sins are. But that's not where we are. We want to know where did the dollars come from? The admitted dollars. Yeah. Assume Arthur Fraser is a very bad person and he must be burnt at stake. It's fine. Let's burn him at stake. But let's come back to the issue. Where did the dollars come from? Where did they us? You know, what was happening in Namibia, and so on and so on. So, and then the other one is to say, no, the money was not, you see the Sunday Times now, no, it was not for, $4 million, or they didn't take all the money, it was 12 million that they took. Fine, let's say, okay, 12 million, make it even less, 10 million rand. Still, the question is, what was it doing in the couch or under the mattress? And why was it not declared, you know? So that's those are the issues we must consider. Well, let's go for the minimum, and not argue the nonsensical things about Arthur Fraser's motives and so on. And the Gupta arrest and what have you. Yes, okay, let's say, okay, the Guptas were arrested. Oh, hallelujah. Fine. But let's come back to the issue of the dollars. Where did this money come from? And not allow ourselves to be distracted into all these counter narratives. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Advocate Poffo. Yeah, I see that in the Sunday Times, Lindiwe Mazibuko is also singing along in this choir of the RET and what the RET motives are and all of those irrelevant. If any of us, whether we are RET or not, become aware of a crime, we pursue the correct route for that crime to be prosecuted. We are within our legal rights, and anything else is just diversion. So I would agree with you that the issue around getting the police to do their job and to charge Cyril Ramaphosa is of critical importance. And I'm now going to open for us to bring in some of our participants who've requested to speak. But please also, while you speak, keep into consideration what actions can you take? How can you mobilize in order to put this pressure on the police that Ramaphosa must be charged? Also, how do you put pressure on your public representatives, members of parliament, members of various legislatures who are representing you, and you've got the right to demand from them that they must insist that the executive ethics code must be implemented and consequences of breaking it must be there for Ramaphosa and whoever else had broken it. Also, the oath of office of the president. Why can't the president not be impeached? Why are you, as members of parliament, including members of parliament of the African National Congress, not moving to impeach President Cyril Ramaphosa? I think we must think how we mobilize along those lines. Tebu, you want to come in?
Comrade Carl, I just also, perhaps whilst we are still on what can be done, the how, I want us to perhaps consider the following, and I've thought long and hard about it, that on a political front, it would appear to me one of the most effective remedies or measures we can employ is that we must now engage with none other than Johan Rupert and Stephen Kosef. In fact, it is lamentable that we find ourselves whereby the real power to the throne in this country sits with Stephen Kosef of Investec. He might be living in Australia, he might be living wherever, but we have to engage him because Investec manages over 400 billion rand of pensions, assets under management. And that money that they manage, most of it comes from money of workers of this country, workers who are suffering at the hands of the policy decisions and policy posture of the Ramaphosa regime. And Stephen Kosef, in fact, I have always said it in a joking manner, but very serious, that if Ramaphosa wanted to go to the toilet and Stephen Kosef said no, he will dare not even move an inch. The second person that must be engaged is none other than Johan Rupert, because the empire that Johan Rupert controls in this country, if everything else falls as it is about to fall, everything as it's about to collapse, he will have no business himself. And we have to actually bring it to his attention and to the international community's attention that both Rupert and Kosef, the businesses that they control are reinsured. If we are to have an uprising similar to what we had last year in July 2021, they are going to find that there is no reinsurer who's going to pay because they themselves would have been party to bringing about a rise to an insurance claim, and those reinsurers must repudiate that claim because the conduct of these people, the reason why Ramaphosa is emboldened and refusing in his obdurate on that position of president is because he knows that he is got absolute approval by these two business leaders who must be engaged, and it must be brought to their attention that they will all perish with the country as fools for having supported what was at least unlawfulness, illegality, and crimes that should have been prosecuted. But if these two people were to realize that they would lose everything that they inherited or even thought that they worked for, I can tell you now, it will be the easiest thing. They will tell Ramaphosa to go and he will go tomorrow morning. But right now, they think that their businesses are safe for as long as Ramaphosa is on the throne. But if they could realize that they will have no business for as long as Ramaphosa is on the throne because of self-help, which is anarchy, and an uprising which will result as a directly from what we are seeing here. Because the moment the criminal justice system is dysfunctional, as currently is the case, there is no country. We then go into self-help, and that is anarchy. And in a state of anarchy, no one is safe. And we need to bring it to their attention. Just not maybe on a political front, we need to draw them in because right now they are behind the curtain pulling strings. We need to lift the curtain on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tebu. I think that's very useful. Perhaps we can also, as part of our discussion, talk about how do we put these big business people and the pullers of the strings behind the scenes on the spot. I would like to add a third party to those that you've mentioned, Tebu, and that is Bidvest and Brian Joffe. I had a very interesting discussion with someone who had direct contact with some of the cleaners at the Bidvest offices at Melrose Arch, the head office there. And they said, you know, almost every Monday morning, Cyril Ramaphosa arrives at the Bidvest office for a breakfast with some of the big captains of industry in South Africa. Now, it is very significant that he arrives there on a Monday morning, because remember, Mondays are ANC days. Those are the days that the National Working Committee of the African National Congress meets, where very important issues are discussed at Niehaus. I don't believe there's any coincidences in life, and especially not in politics. There's no coincidence that those breakfasts took place on the Monday mornings before Cyril Ramaphosa goes to Niehaus for the National Working Committee meetings. He was receiving his instructions. We need to deal not only with the agent, we need to deal with those who give the agent the instructions. Mr. Khoza, I see that you have requested to speak. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Carl, and let me greet the speakers and the listeners in the space. There's two things that I want to mention. The first one is there's something that Dalim Poffo mentioned, which was particularly interesting about the character of Cyril. And I remember having a discussion with one of my friends, and we said it, we had it as a light joke, saying that out of all of the revolutionary theories and books and literature that existed, you have a president who goes out of his place to quote a song, considering the fact of context. But in that sense, in the light and in the context of your conventional comrade in South Africa, that was like a sign that this is not the type of president who would be leftist in approach or comradely in approach. You'd expect that a comrade would cite Marx, you'd expect a comrade would cite various political philosophers that existed, but one would cite a song. And that in a sense shows that whatever Teralikuta mentioned about him having written a letter to the apartheid government saying that the ANC has been feeding him communist literature, shows that he's not interested in all those literatures, and he is just I would say in a sense, and in a respectful manner, a cheese boy. The second thing that I'd like to mention is there's a certain level of fear that if we let this thing to go, and my last input would be what I think would have to do as a country to keep the spirit going and to keep accountability going. But my second point is that if this thing is not handled carefully, we might face a bigger problem of having a personality cult that at the same time is more of a dictator, to an extent that if you have someone who has so much power and control of the various state wings and is unaccountable for anything and does not face the same plight that ministers and some of his political rivals faced, I fear that even if we could take a resolve that we are going to vote in elections, there's a possibility of Cyril coming back because of how much control he has, and that is going to deal a huge blow in the democracy. And even if party agents will be present in various voting stations, their queries and cries will be dismissed the very same way this issue is dismissed. If there are concerns that elections have been rigged, the media will shut up and keep quiet. So we'll have a very big problem of someone who has total hegemony and does not have any form of accountability. I think it's important, and I'm glad that this, for the first time, such an issue has consistently stayed on the top 5 of Twitter, which shows that for the first time, South Africa is not willing to let this thing go that easily, because I think in their heads, they are used to these temporary uproars that shut down immediately. And for the first time, they are realizing that there's this level of consistency with regards to Cyril having to account for what he is accused of and the various cases. And I think that level should be consistent so that even in future politicians and future leaders should know that we live in a state where everybody should be accountable. So
thank you. I take the message that you deliver to us that we must not allow this outrage to be a flash in the pan, but it must be sustained, and it must be sustained towards the purpose of removing Cyril Ramaphosa and changing the levels of accountability of our government. That is very serious. And this Twitter space tries to make a small contribution in that regard. But ultimately, it is going to be in the hands of us as a population to mobilize, to continue to push for this issue to remain on the forefront of people taking note of it and being prepared to take action and to make sacrifices to make sure that we achieve our objectives. I'm now handing over to Ayanda Mntralana, who has requested the mic. Ayanda? Ayanda, you haven't activated your mic. It is still muted. Can you just unmute your mic so that we can hear you? Ayanda's mic is still muted. I'm going to give an opportunity to Themba Khwawe to come in and take the mic. Themba?
Mpangazita, good evening, Tebu, Advocate Poffo, and all other listeners. My take is very simple. A crime has been committed, we all know that. Advocate Poffo has clearly outlined that. What are the crimes that have been committed? We have heard from Professor Siepe. There's one thing that Advocate Poffo has said, which is very critical. We now have to put our political differences aside. Actually, these differences are very petty. There's very little that divides us than that which unites us. And we now have to go to the ground, approach every structure that exists, which is of the same mind, and have a clear plan on how we go forward. I have very little faith, Advocate Poffo, in the NPA. We know that when Cyril came in, or just there was money that was distributed. It may be an allegation now, it may not have been proven, but we know that these allegations cannot be taken lightly. That R1 billion was made available, and some in the judiciary and many others in very significant positions received some kitties. This is very worrisome. When I think about a law taking its course, are we ever going to see that? We're in a different situation today, Advocate Poffo. When people went for Comrade Jay-Z, those that were in office are not people that he had bought, are not people that he had in his pocket. Today we have a different situation altogether. We have the judiciary taking decisions that are very irrational. Well, ask yourself, was the law applied? I listened to, I'm not a law expert, I listened to one judge who had said Comrade Zuma's sentence or his so-called illegal release, the days that he had stayed out of prison should not be considered. I asked myself, how did he arrive at that decision? This is just one example. But we have a duty now together to work together as one force. As one force. There's a lot that unites us than that which divides us. We have to bring back our country under our own control, not under the white monopoly capital. They may have the power to choose, they may have the power to influence, but they should never have the power to control the masses. I would leave it at that. Mpangazit, I thank you.
Thank you so much. I see Ayanda is indicating that he wants the mic, and also there's a indication from Tebu of Democracy in Action. Ayanda, please unmute your mic and come in, and then immediately after that, we're going to Tebu from Democracy in Action. For some reason, it seems for Ayanda to be impossible to unmute the mic, and I'm now going over to Tebu of Democracy in Action. The mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Comrade Carl, and good evening to yourself and to your co-host, Mr. Tebu. Good evening to the People's Advocate, to Advocate Dalim Poffo and Professor Siepe. I think both of them, we are forever grateful for their insightful counsel whenever we need them. And good evening to all your listeners. Comrade Carl, I think the question before us today is where to from now, and for us as Democracy in Action, we've always said that we are ready, and this is a opportune time for us to make sure that we really act on this, because I think this is the only chance that we've got the buffalo in the corner, and we must really act. Tomorrow will be 20 days since Mr. Fraser has laid criminal complaint against Ramaphosa, and nothing has happened so far except what we read last week, that Mr. Fraser has met with the Hawks again. But as the advocate has said that Mr. Ramaphosa has already admitted to some of the crimes that he has already committed. And for us, we have to go on that and say everything else should be a subject of investigation. So there is a complaint against him, and part of that complaint is that there was a crime at his farm, and he never reported that crime, and there was money that was stolen in that farm, and that money was in dollars, of which that money was his. For whatever reason, he seemed to have believed that we said that money was from the state, and we know very well in this country only using rands, or well, except for us, or all of us are only using rands. And why would we say that he stole money from us if we don't even if we are not even using dollars in this country? So that money wasn't our money, and we don't care whose money it is, but it was found in his premises. So the big question is where to from here. We've already written letters to the Human Rights Commission requesting that they intervene, at least on the human rights issues where people were arrested unlawfully, were tortured, and were paid not to say anything. So we've asked that part, the Human Rights Commission, to deal with that part, but also we've also written a letter to both the Commissioner of Police and also the NDPP, Ms. Shamila Patoi. So also requesting that since the complaint has been laid and accused number one has already accepted that yes, 1, 2, and 3 did happen, and of that he is aware, and so he must at least be charged on that. So for us is at the moment we are looking at other avenues, different avenues. Of course, the one that Advocate Poffo is speaking about, we are also very inclined to go and sleep at the NPA offices up until such time that Mr. Ramaphosa is charged. And also, but I think again there, I want to ask the question both to Advocate Poffo and also to Professor. Where do we draw the line? Because we don't want to interfere with the police work. So where do we actually draw the line and say this is interference and we don't want to interfere with the police work? Because some of us, because of our outspokenness about this government, is that we have been put under radar, we have been threatened, we've been told by Hawks that we are being investigated now and again. So we don't want to jump the line where we interfere with the work of the police. But of course, we must act, and we must act within the law to make sure that at least he is charged from the crimes that he has committed, and everything else from there will be a subject of investigation. So we cannot at this stage, or the SAPS cannot be at this stage that they are investigating everything that happens in that farm. We don't want that. We want him to be charged now, and then as soon as he's charged, then proper investigation during his absence can take place without any interference either from him or from his head of security, who also 20 days later, he is still not suspended. So he's still a member of SAPS, meaning that he can still interfere with the work of the police. So that on its own is just worrying. So that is the matter that we are looking at doing, but also perhaps to also follow around wherever it goes in terms of protesting, having placards that arrest Ramaphosa now. This must stop now. Whatever we can do, wherever it goes, whether he's attending a UN meeting, whether he's attending a SADC meeting, whether he's in Cape Town, whether he's in Durban, wherever he's attending that meeting. So we must follow him around and make sure that we protest and say that Ramaphosa must be arrested and he must be charged from the crimes that he has committed. So for us as an organization, we are ready. And if it means that we must approach any court, the NPA or the SAPS or whomever at this moment, we are willing to do that. And we invite everyone to say that let's stick together. Excuse me. Let's sit together, or let's stand together and fight this criminality. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Tebu. I think one of the questions we need to ask ourselves, and I'm going to hand over to Nkoshisensha Shezi, who's asked for the mic, and after that, and I'm warning Comrade Dalim Poffo and also Professor Siepe, I'm going to come to you to address the same question. Yes, it is a good idea for us to go and camp out at the NPA offices. Yes, it is a good idea for us to mobilize in our thousands, protest wherever President Ramaphosa is showing his face and registering our insistence that he should be charged. Why is it that at this stage we are not yet there? Why are the people, when we hear the anger here on this platform and we hear it from other platforms, why is it not yet mobilized into those thousands of people out on the streets, making their voices heard? And how do we move to that where we achieve that? I'm handing over the mic to Comrade Shezi, and after that, I'm going back to Advocate Poffo and also to Professor Siepe. And Tebu, at any time, please come in and help us to get direction, and specifically also address this very pertinent question that I've just directed at all of us. The mic is yours, Comrade Shezi.
People's advocates, Comrade Dalim Poffo, the rest of the speakers and listeners, you are revolutionary greeted. Yes, we have a task to do. I think it is important, first and foremost, to acknowledge and accept that there is no organ of the state that is going to do this very revolutionary work that has to be done. There's no state arm of the state that is going to do it for us. It is therefore our responsibility. Let me share just a little bit. Maybe before I do, I just want to acknowledge a contribution that I had. I think it is Comrade Siepe who made a contribution to say that these are the people that are really controlling the white monopoly capital and a power base of Ramaphosa, and we need to engage them. I just want to challenge through you, Comrade Niehaus, people like Advocate Poffo, to say that can a delegation be formulated that is going to seek a meeting directly with these people and give them ultimatums. It might not work, but I think it will be a good thing to stand in the history of this very revolution, that at some stage we were prepared to engage in a dialogue that would avert an ugly situation that is, in my view and my analysis, is slowly but unfolding. Let me remind you, comrades, that ordinary men and women out there who hardly speak English, their services get disrupted on daily basis. Their electricity get cut off, their livelihood gets ruined by the Ramaphosa regime, their employment gets ruined by the Ramaphosa regime, and they may not analyze, some of them, they may not analyze as you do. They may not articulate the problem as you do, but all they know is that this Ramaphosa regime is supposed to bring these services to them, and they are not bringing it. And the only language they know how is to disrupt the system violently so. That is why in the midst of the July uprising, just before the uprising, months before, weeks before, we were warning, I, together with Comrade Niehaus, as many other revolutionaries, had used our tools of analysis to say that we are heading in a very ugly direction. We are heading for a bloodbath. And some political intervention needed to happen. And in the midst of the July uprising, when ordinary people were calling, and in fact, when people were being massacred, it is myself, Comrade Niehaus, who went to meet Cyril Ramaphosa with a list of demands of the RET. Unfortunately, that meeting did not happen, but we stood.
Comrade Shezi,
Yes.
perhaps
Yes.
we should just share, because it's a bit funny. We should share with comrades what happened when you and I went to President Ramaphosa's residence in Hyde Park. And we were there with a memorandum. We were aware that he was inside the residence. We didn't have a car, so we went with Uber to go and deliver this memorandum. The protection unit people who were there were quite friendly, because some of them had previously also worked with President Jacob Zuma. They recognized us. The one gentleman went inside to inform President Ramaphosa that we were waiting outside with a memorandum of demands. And when he came out, the whole atmosphere changed. There were people coming out there with shotguns, ready to chase us away. And he even said to us, you better get away right now. You're not welcome here. You remember our Uber driver, our Uber car got such a fright, he even drove off and left us stranded on the pavement. So you can see the kind of response from Cyril Ramaphosa to democratic engagement, to demands being made of him by the people, repressive. And that is why I've maintained throughout, and Comrade Shezi, I'm giving the mic back to you. That's why I've maintained throughout that we've got, if not already a dictatorship in the making. Back to you, Comrade Shezi.
Thank you very much, Comrade Niehaus, for elaborating on that fateful day. And I must add that you and I went against the advice of our security people who were looking after us in that very violent epoch. But we felt it was correct of us to do that. Hence, we're using an Uber as opposed to other methods that were suggested to us. Nonetheless, let me say, I want to put it to you, Comrade Carl, that I would highly appreciate if you can speak to Comrade Dalimpofu, who I think is with us now, and a delegation of our delegation can be sent to these people so that a demand can be made, and it must go across the length and breadth of South Africa. Everybody must know that we seek a peaceful transition from this dictatorship into a people's government. A second to that, I want to share hence Comrade Arthur Fraser had made open a charge against Cyril Ramaphosa, laid a complaint. I did the same. I know Comrade Carl did the same. I went to the Durban Central Police Station in Durban, and it took me at least 1.5 hours of relentlessly fighting to get the police to take my statement. And let me tell you, it's not that those people don't want to take my statement, but it is simply because they are fearful of their superiors. It is simply because they are fearful that they may even lose their jobs. And once we had reached a stage with the help of a very professional law attorney that was with me, who allayed their fears and spoke to them in a manner that helped us to get somewhere. They started opening up to say, comrades, we really appreciate what you are doing. We want you to do what you are doing because it is your right as a citizen, as citizens. However, these are the challenges that you are facing. But on that score, I want to encourage each and every one of us, all of us in this space, let's find time to go to a police station and report this alleged criminality that took place at Palapala Farm. But what I think, and in fact, what we are doing on our side from KwaZulu-Natal is that hence we have opened these cases. Starting from tomorrow, we are going to be engaging members of the society to say that we must come to a point where we give the NPA and the police an ultimatum. We give them start a countdown to say you arrest Ramaphosa within the next 14 days. Failure to do so will compel us to force you to do that. That is one of the things that I think we should be able to do, to say that there should be a day where we launch a countdown. Hence, we'll be launching a countdown. We'll be getting every citizen ready to say on a particular date, if Ramaphosa is not charged by then, this will mean that isugile. And if I'm saying isugile, iyobe isugile, and ayisuswanga ithina isuswe yibona. And therefore, we must be able to use that space within that period of the countdown to go to universities, to go to churches and explain our countdown and get society behind the countdown. Because other than that, I don't see the NPA moving an inch. I don't see Begitele making any speech about the saga that happened in Palapala Farm. And I suspect he may even be a beneficiary to whatever that is transpiring in Palapala Farm. As I conclude, Comrade Niehaus, I was very saddened coming from KwaZulu-Natal, seeing my MEC, my elected leader, commenting about the auction that took place at Palapala, I believe it was yesterday, stating that every man is here at Palapala Farm. Whoever is not here at Palapala Farm is pink. Loosely meaning that you are not a man enough if you are not here at Palapala Farm. And what was being auctioned there are cows in the regions of millions. And that's made me wonder if these leaders that we have elected do not see us as wimps, do not see us as, I nearly used a very loose language, but nonetheless, I beseech you, comrades, that first and foremost, we must take an oath. If all of us in this space could take an oath, just like the comrades who were facing the dictatorship of Louis XVI in France, took a tennis court oath to say that we will never disband until we take down Louis XVI. If we can say so, that we are ready to bring about change in our country, we are ready to hold the alleged criminal Ramaphosa to account. Let's take an oath And let's move in that direction. Firstly, we create that that panel that is going to speak to these people, and we give them an ultimatum, and we tell our people, we mobilize society. If the D-Day comes, it must be at the hands of the masses. I thank you, Comrade Niehaus.
Thank you, Comrade Chezi, and thanks for those very pertinent suggestions that you made. There were some issues that you raised, which also touches on legal matters that I would like Advocate Poffo to respond to. But let me say, before I hand over to Advocate Poffo, none of us should allow ourselves to be intimidated. Yes, we must move with deliberation, we must move with care, but we must never allow ourselves to be intimidated. That will be the death of us. I'm handing over to Advocate Poffo to respond to some of the inputs that have been made, and Advocate Poffo, I'm asking you to specifically also to respond to some of the practical suggestions that have been made by Comrade Chezi. The mic is yours.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Carl. You know, I don't know if he's still here, I wanted to make a special welcome to Mr. Tebu, Mr. T, who also runs another space that we frequent. So, and I was happy I know he's in Canada, I was happy to see him here. If he's still here, welcome, Mr. T. The reason I'm mentioning this, Mr. Tebu, is because I have said this in his space previously. We must get out of this mode of just talking and, you know, having a space and discussing and so on. Every time we have this kind of discussion, it must be translated into action. Otherwise, you know, we'll just be having these talk shops. So, and that includes making sacrifices of time. You don't have to be a full-time activist, but there's no revolution that's going to be fought by just talking. Talking is important, and debate is important, and theorizing is also important. But we need action. And action requires a lot of effort. It requires money. It requires organization. It requires intellectual input. It requires structure, you know, some kind of steering committee of some sort. Yeah. So this is a democratic country. There's nothing wrong with somebody can form tomorrow something called the Pala Action Committee or whatever, and then structure it in some way, run it from the boot of a car until you get enough money to buy letterheads or whatever, and do all the things that Comrade Gosencha is talking about. Then soon you say, okay, these are the people, and we demand a meeting with Bekicele to know when is what's the progress with the Hawks investigation, what's happening with the admitted facts, and so on and so on. Similarly, Batoi, the Speaker of Parliament, the Public Protector. Remember, the Public Protector raised those 31 questions, and in terms of the relevant act, she must finish her investigation within 30 days. I'm sure we're already 10 days into that. So what's going to happen? The Public Protector must be engaged as well, even the current one who's acting. But there's also the issue about the suspension of the Public Protector, which is a very crucial issue in this matter, because, you know, we in the EFF, for example, have raised a very pertinent issue. Society must take it up. Is it possible for any of these agencies to do proper investigation in respect of a sitting president? Should he not step aside for that reason alone? Because the very few policemen who are going to go to where you went to, Comrade Carl, and knock at the door at Hyde Park and say, I'm here to see Mr. Ramaphosa to take a statement. they're going to be intimidated, obviously. Patoi herself might be intimidated. The Speaker of Parliament has showed weakness by refusing to investigate. We saw how she protected Ramaphosa in Parliament. So these are demands that can be made now within the next few days. You don't have to wait for something I don't know. We can decide here that that's the action that's going to be taken. This is what's going to happen on Wednesday. This is what's going to happen on Thursday. So that's the first thing. And then we also need to put those of us who won't be able to participate at that level. Let's put money. Let's put something. Let's put a contribution. I mean, there are 2,000 people in this space right now. So if all of us could put, I don't know, 100 rand or 1,000 rand, those who can, we would have immediately $1 million rand or something like that, and would be able tomorrow to do something, to engage somebody, to get buses or whatever needs to be done, So talking is not going to resolve anything, really. That's really the message that I'm relaying. We need to put our money where our mouth is, both literally and figuratively. So that's how you mobilize society. You need some structure. You need a few people to put pen and paper, and then structure something, and then go to the media, mobilize people. And if maybe on day one there'll be only 50 of us, on day two there might be 200, on day three there might be 1,000, and so on and so on. And that's what we need to do. And we can say people must march to police stations in their own areas. They don't have to all come to some central point and make the same demand. So it's very simple. We just need organization. When we come to the issue of even ANC members, I mean, some of us are not ANC members, but the ANC members must start demanding. The so-called Integrity Commission or Integrity Committee must be engaged by those people who are within the ANC to say, when are you seeing this man? And when you see him, what are you going to say to him? And we want to have a report, or want to have somebody sitting in that meeting who's going to represent a group of members, so that we know that he's being asked the right questions, and so on and so on. So it should be a frontal attack at all levels, so that we don't allow the issue to die. Tabo asked, where do we draw the line? You don't want to be seen to be interfering. And I must praise Tabo, because his organization, Democracy in Action, really is an example of what I've been saying. They don't just talk, they try. I mean, they don't have resources, and we should be assisting them with resources as well. But they try, they intervene in the court cases, they make their voice known, even though they get harassed. Those are the kinds of organizations we should be supporting, so that we have our own version of what AfriForum does for the right-wing forces. Temba said that, we must put political differences aside. I cannot agree more. This is a matter that goes beyond our political affiliations. Of course, when it comes to parliament and the work that must be done there, we have to rely on political parties, because that's just the way it is structured. But all the other terrains that I spoke about around the NPA,
Advocate Poffo, you've gone silent. I don't know what happened there. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, somebody was trying to call me. Yeah. No, I was saying all the other structures that I mentioned, the NPA or the police or the public protector and so on, those must be engaged by us as citizens, not as members of particular political parties, because the crisis of leadership is affecting the country. Then you also mentioned something. Okay, the way I see this thing is, there should be two focal points of action. One is around accountability, and we've discussed that. The professor has mentioned that. I've mentioned what needs to be done around accountability and the action there. But the other one, which I mentioned in my introduction, is transparency. That's a focal point. That one must be directed to Ramaphosa himself. And that's where I say he's probably at the weakest, because even his supporters are demanding transparency. So we should, that chorus must grow to say he must come clean. He must tell us the truth. Remember, this is the president we're talking about. He doesn't have the privilege of saying due process, and so on. He must tell us what actually happened. He owes us that he can't hide behind slogans of due process. If he wanted to do due process, then he should not have spoken at the Limpopo ANC conference. Once you start speaking, you owe us explanations. And when you are a president, you lose certain privileges of saying, I'm not going to speak, my right to remain silent and all that. No, you must speak. You can do that with the police and all those things. But as citizens, we need certain answers. Now, that has to be linked with the other issue that was mentioned, I think, by Temba, of Busasa. Remember, this is a guy who already reached the constitutional values of transparency by hiding money that was donated to him. Again, I mean, how did we let somebody get away with that? I mean, it's only the EFF that has taken this to court to say you can't, and that case is still continuing. You can't, as a president, say, I receive money in relation to a political act, but I want it to be hidden. Forget the judges. I mean, I don't know why the judges did that, but he himself, he's the one who asked the judges to do that. Why? We should take him to task for that. Why did he even make a request like that? That his bank statements must be hidden. Because from those bank statements, we would know. If he's innocent, he should just say, no, yeah, I have nothing to hide. Yeah, the statements. But it's because he knows that once those statements are revealed, it will be clear that he was centrally involved. This nonsense about he was at arm's length and what have you. It's just, I mean, anybody who believes that needs their head to be examined. Because we have made examples of expenditure that was made from the CR17 money, which was directly traceable to Ramaphosa himself. We made that example of the two EFF MPs who were suspended because they took, I think, 50,000 rand each. And their explanation was that, no, one of them, I had a bereavement at home and I spoke to Ramaphosa and he felt sorry for me and he directed 50,000 rand. So if he could do that, a nice act, yeah, thank you very much. But if he could do that, how can he say that he didn't know how the money is going to be spent? That's just one example. I'm just saying that, we have ourselves to blame for accepting those kinds of lousy explanations. And maybe we've done it in the Busasa situation. We can't do it again now. And just, I mean, who's really going to accept that this guy did not know about this money? And he did not know that these people were being sent to Namibia. He did not know that the domestic worker was involved. Just simple things like that. We must just not be so gullible. I mean, when he says he accept the money comes from the sale of animals, how many animals were bought by who? Why did all these people buy in dollars? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Why that money should have been mixed, and it should have been rands and dollars and pounds and what have you. But all of us, everybody, all of these own buyers decided to bring stacks of dollars rolled into stacks of 100 rand notes, as it is now said. It's just making us like children or fools, basically. And so I'm saying that that's another center of activity, just around demanding transparency from him. And that's a whole different process of marching to him to give us answers, apart from marching to the accountability institutions about his arrest and so on. So those are some of the if we had a steering committee of some sort, 5 or 6 people who are going to sit down and workshop this, they can thresh out a program of action, come back to us, and then say this is what's going to happen in the next couple of days. Yeah, dictatorship, there's no doubt that dictatorship is here. That's we have what we call a smiling assassin. How do we, as a society, allow a situation where somebody is told by the public protector on a Friday and asked questions about Phala Phala and you must do this, and then the following Monday or Tuesday they suspend that person and we keep quiet? It's so transparent that this is a move, a dictator's move. How is the NPA and the Hawks, how are they going to act against him if he has shown them that if you do this, this is what I do, I'll chop you, I'll suspend you and take you off? How do we allow a situation where double standards, the professor has said? We were told that Zuma was could not appoint the commission, the chair of the commission. In a separate case, we were told that President Zuma could not suspend the NPA head because he was also under investigation by the NPA. Well and good. But those principles that were applied in those cases now suddenly don't apply. So people must talk and say, but this can be. You can't have one law for Zuma and another law for Ramaphosa. Just at the level of consistency and fairness. Yeah, and let me, if I can just add on a lighter note, Mr. Khoza spoke about a president who quotes a song. Even that song was stolen from Brahu, because those who knew Brahu, like I did, should know that he decreed that he was so disgruntled with this government that he said none of them should even be allowed to speak at his funeral. And that's why I was at that funeral. There was he didn't know the thing of the official funeral. And but yet, after he died, his song was appropriated by a crook. Thanks.
Thank you, Advocate Poffo. I think there are some very good suggestions that came out of your input together with what Comrade Shezi and others said. Let's put together a steering committee or a coordinating committee. It will be difficult for us to do it on this platform, but let some of us get together, do that, create some organization, whether we call it a concerned citizens non-profit organization or Ramaphosa must go, that we can speculate and debate about. And then let's come back and use this platform and other platforms that are available to us to work out a timetable of a program of action. And as you quite correctly said, Advocate Poffo, let those comrades who may not necessarily always be able to themselves be out on the streets, put their money where their mouths are, and contribute so that we have resources to keep this issue on the forefront and to make sure that we succeed in our mobilization that Ramaphosa must go. I'm going to hand over to Professor Siepe now for his input, and Tebu Khadima, after that, I'm going to ask you to give us a bit of a summary and direction before we go over to the next number of people who have requested to speak on this platform. Advocate Poffo, can you please mute your mic?
Comrade Carl, can I
Yes.
just say one quick thing before the Prof comes in? Yeah.
Of course.
Yes, I just wanted to say, to expand on the point, and I'd like the Prof also to take it on. The question of the fact that somebody is a president comes with certain responsibilities which are different from, you and I. So we must hone in on those issues. And I wanted to just make this example of Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson is facing impeachment and all sorts of things, and even being fired from his party and all that. Why? Because he drank a glass of whiskey or whatever during the lockdown. Now, I'm sure that thousands of people, including myself, who had a glass of gin or whatever during the lockdown. Yeah. But the point is that the reason why he is being held to account more than other citizens is because he is the prime minister. And he's the one who was telling people about lockdown regulations and what have you, and saving lives. And therefore, he's being held accountable for the double standards. Not so much for drinking a glass of whatever he drank, but it's the fact that as the prime minister, he was at the forefront of a particular campaign and so on. So that's what the level of discussion, or rather of accountability, we should require from Ramaphosa, and not accept this nonsense about due process or I'll keep quiet and wait for the agencies and so on. No, you are the president. Give us answers right now. Did you or did you not get involved in torturing women at your farm? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I think that's very valuable. Professor Siepe, the mic is yours.
Yeah, hi, Carl. Thanks very much for all the input, and also for Advocate Poffo's take on this in terms of really bringing it to what is actionable. And I like the idea of having a small group that would look into what will be the program. And what has also emerged is that there are things that are obvious, admitted crimes or violations. And when this is actually put, it should be very clear that it's in defense of the Constitution and in defense of our democracy. And this notion of that somebody can get away with it cannot be accepted, because if that happens, then the whole democracy, the whole constitutionalism collapses. So we need to deal with it, even take the language that he uses to say, yes, you have said the following, we want that you talk about transparency, but where's transparency here? And I think the parties in parliament have already forced put questions, and out of those questions there'll be other things that will emerge. But I think the small group that can be put will start dealing with the admitted or areas where he has acknowledged to have done a number of things. And then once we do that, then we push it to, this also must be made public. I mean, I think the small group will put in together a document that spells this out. And this way, it will also force the NPA. I mean, we are saying to the NPA, if they're not willing to charge the men, they must tell us so that there could be alternatives. And the idea of admitted and clear ones is to prevent them from hiding behind the notion of due process. When he said due process, it's because he had consulted. And the whole idea is, let's drag this and continue to drag it until almost hoping that it will go away. But the mere fact that he cannot even answer questions, we must actually say, if he cannot answer these questions, he's not fit to be a president. He's not fit to talk about corruption. He's not fit to talk about transparency. And what type of president can society allow? How can we allow somebody who cannot even do the most basic things? And I think the examples that on international experience that the advocate Poffo points out, this is the standard. We say this is what the democracy means. This is what accountability means. And I do think, Carl, this is probably the quickest way that we can deal with it. And of course, the issue, once that has been established, we also need to find ways in which we can resource that program, and somehow we need to find a way in which people can volunteer. But once we can have a cogent argument, a document that can be looked at, that is impenetrable in terms of its logic, coherence, and demand for constitutionalism, then we'll be much more closer. And then it can be spread to all people. But this is about our country, and we should not be intimidated from demanding that the president of this country must account to us in the same way that they did with the President Zuma, that the whole notion and this double standards must also be exposed. And what is also interesting is that the drum majorities that is comprised of the foundations, they are tight-lipped, they are silent, because they know that they cannot come in defense of what they see. They are actually embarrassed. But what they are now saying is that if we remove him, what's going to come is the worst. That is a waste of our time. We should not be concentrating on that. We should be saying, this is the issue. So focus is very important. And if we don't focus, we'll find ourselves busy with other things. Like they try to say, oh, the Gupta have been arrested, or all sorts of other things. The issue is that the president here clearly has violated his oath of office. He has also violated our laws. And we must put it as sharply. And the gurus here can actually put a very tight argument. And what we need to do is also to push pressure on the NPA, because all we need is just the charging. And once we've done that, then the processes can unfold on its own. And remember, Carl, the other thing is we have the Namibian connection. The president of Namibia has not said, he has not been consulted. There's very clear documentation, discussions that have emerged that it is possible that our president did make a call on issues of theft. The question is, why is the president getting involved in those matters if it's not about defeating the ends of justice? So all these things, the group will be able to put that together. So that is as far as I think we can make it much more simpler for all people to say, yes, this document makes sense. This is penetrable, this is logical, and call all South Africans to say, in defense of your country, this is what you need to do.
Thank you, Prof. I think the two inputs from Advocate Poffo and Professor Siepe are very helpful. Let us agree that we will put together a coordinating committee, that coordinating committee will start working on developing a cogent document of demands and also a program of action with realistic dates for mobilization. That we will report back on this issue coming Wednesday, 2nd of June, when the next Twitter Spaces conversation will take place. In fact, that Twitter Spaces conversation will be a very interesting one because it is with the public protector, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhubane. But we at the same time will make use of the opportunity of that Twitter Spaces conversation at 7 o'clock on the 22nd of June to report back. I will draw on the wisdom of Advocate Poffo, Professor Siepe, and other comrades to put together such a coordinating committee. And we will also come back to that Twitter Spaces conversation on Wednesday to talk not only about such a practical program and a coordinated and cogent document of demands, but also proposals on how we finance such a program of action in order to make sure that it is successful. Unfortunately, Tebu Khadima has disappeared from our platform. I hope he will come back, and as soon as he does come back, I will give him an opportunity to do the input that I've requested of him. But for now, I'm going to go back to those who have requested to speak. X-Man, I see you've requested to speak. The mic is yours.
Thank you, Comrade Carl. I greet you. The advocate of the people, Prof. Siepe, and I can see she's not gone now, but I'm seeing Mr. T. I'm greeting you too, Mr. T. So, Comrade Carl, people have taken all my words, but I'm happy that they've done what I think should be done, because I think we think the same. So, first of all, as I will say that I appreciated the EFF, what they did in Parliament. I appreciated their bravery, what they did in Parliament. So, to me, I was thinking about the program of action that we need to put it together and form that committee or steering committee, whatever we call it, to try and actually list the program of action that we are going to target this problem. So to me, I think the other thing that we shouldn't forget is the financing side. I think the DIA should send the bank statement to us so that we can pay money, so that this program can be financed without any hesitation. But to me, again, I don't think that this program should target only the president. I think we should also target his close people. One of them that I think we should target is Jamnanda. You see, on the ground, if we want to mobilize the ground, let's target Jamnanda, because we have people who can speak English, who are so frustrated by what we call it a load reduction. I was in Soweto this afternoon. There's no electricity there. When we come through Eldorado, Eldos, there's no electricity. You go down to Pimville, there's nothing. That's up to Rockville, right? So if we want to mobilize, because we should, the program should actually try and get into the ground and get this anger taken out. What I can say, this anger being organized for this purpose. So to me, then we have that program of action that will list the sins of this criminal. We can even go as far as these companies that he owns, which have shifted profit to the offshore. There are few companies that he's involved that they shifted profit. I don't want to mention them here now. And those things must be put in as part of his incompetence, his criminal intention. Marikana must be on the list, on the board, and the economy that is dire, which is unemployment, petrol, and so on, must all those things be put there in those board. Then we follow this guy wherever he goes. But at the same time, I was just saying to myself, because the Northern Gauteng is like a gangster high court. I was thinking that we should also target that guy who's on Mlambo, and we target the Zondo, wherever they are, where they stay. I think obviously the CJ will be up there in his heaven, and we go and target them. And so this program must be split into more than one action, because if we do that, then the mobilization of our people is going to grow, as far as I'm concerned. So I thank you guys, People's Advocate, and Prof. Siepe is gone now. Prof. Siepe, Comrade Carl, and Chezi. I think you guys are wonderful. But I don't know whether we could say, to get the population on the ANC, maybe the Nkandla must be frequently revisited. For what purpose? Carl, I trust your brain will come up with a program that will help us to have the ANC going there and irritated the haters, okay? And in Parliament, I think the guys that are in Parliament must try and support, as somebody said, let's forget about our political affiliation. Let's just be united now. In Parliament, we must also organize in such a way that the impeachment must be done in Parliament. I'll just drop it there.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you please mute your mic? I see Comrade Dali has opened his mic. I'm sure he wants to speak. Comrade Dali, come in.
Yes, yeah, just a quick one, Comrade Carl. Yes, I wanted to say two things just quickly. It's good to have this debate because I think we all get enriched and ideas come. X-Men has mentioned something which I think is very important, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So if we're going to have that small group, I think we should invite Comrade Tebu from the DIA, because the DIA is already there. So we don't have to invent the wheel. Maybe that's the vehicle we should use, and then if we decide to have a different one, we can do that. But let's use a ready-made base, because they have a structure, they are registered, they have a bank account and so on. And we can then see at that point, and they're already involved in all sorts of other matters, such as the public protector case, which are all related to what we're talking about. Because it goes beyond the issue of Phala, as I suggested earlier. But it should be about broadly demanding accountability. So I was just going to suggest that, Comrade Carl, that we use the vehicle of the DIA, or at least co-opt Comrade Tebu, so that we can see what they have and what they have done. Yeah. Just the other small point was that it must go far beyond even our different political affiliations. It must be the church, the women, business people, as was mentioned earlier. I mean, so why are the women quiet when we have a situation where we're told that a woman was tied up and tortured at a farm? So we need those kinds of voices to come and attack the problem from different spheres. So on the one day, we'll be focusing on what is effectively domestic violence. On another day, we might be focusing on something else, but that's how we mobilize society, by making sure that we appeal to different constituencies around the same problem. Thanks.
Thank you, Comrade Ali. I think what we need to do is to get that small committee together. I'm quite happy to play that coordinating role with whoever else we bring in. And then we will come up with a proposal in terms of the structure that we use, in terms of the issues around bank accounts, all of that. And obviously, we will bring Comrade Tebu from DIA into that. And we will come back with a recommendation at the next meeting on Wednesday, the 22nd. While it is good that we get inputs from comrades and people who participate here on what should be in the program, can I also ask that we avoid trying to write that program of action now? Yes, some suggestions, but keep our discussion in the context of the generalities and issues that we are dealing with. And we will come back with a proper proposal, which will then be discussed further, because it's not going to be possible for us to do it in terms of writing that proposal in this particular session. Comrade Dali, I see you open
Agreed.
your mic.
Agreed. No, I just wanted to say I agree fully with you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, Comrade Sepu Khadima is not back yet. I've requested him to try and come back. I'm going to ask Mayagabu Seleka, who's requested to speak, to take the mic. The mic is yours.
Thank you, Comrade Carl, and the People's Advocate, and everyone on the space. I think it can only be proper to waste just few seconds of the time on the space and say Happy Father's Day to all the fathers, and pass my respect and love to our engineer down there. I saw Machala Koko, and my submission will take off from the last engagement that we had with the People's Advocate, because the question was posed to say, where do we look, or where do we go from here? And he gave us 5 options. And in my spare time, or if one were to scrutinize all those options that he gave us, the police, the NPA, the public protector, and the parliament, you'll come to the realization that we only left with the 5th one, of which happened to be the people, because you have to be some special kind of naive to think or they will wake up one morning and give an order that the president has to be called in and taken to account as to what really happened at the farm. And the same thing goes to Ms. Shamila Batoyi. We don't see that happening, that the NPA is going to do something. And the public protector, I'm not going to even waste time on that, because it is in public domain that we have seen what happened to her after the question that she asked. And out of all the options that were given by the People's Advocate, I am of a view that the public protector was that person who rose to the occasion and did what she's constitutionally mandated to do, to ask a relevant question, and she's now no more. So we are left with one option, and one option only, of which is us, the people, to try to hold this person accountable. So I share the sentiments of having the plan of action to say, what do we do? Because we cannot gather here and share all these great ideas, but they do not materialize into something that we can see, and as something that we can touch. Because in my view is that this whole thing, it's well planned, it's well orchestrated. It is not by coincidence that we find ourselves where we are. It started way before Nazareth. The plan was there that so much money is going to be invested, that such and such will hold at this position, to make it in such a way that certain people are going to walk away with murder. And just a quick one to the People's Advocate. Don't we as a nation hold a view, Yahore, the inquiry into the state capture, didn't we do that prematurely? Because I hold a strong view that we are now in the real state capture, given all these arms of state that I feel they are compromised. You look at the judiciary. I know the People's Advocate and Toby and all these great minds, like the saying that Lady Justice is blind, but clearly not in South Africa. Because we read some of the judgments from the Judge President Mlambo, they are contradictory. They just doesn't make sense. That can only tell you, clearly Lady Justice is not blind here. And you look at the media, the kind of narrative that they're driving, and if you do not be an independent thinker. You're going to idolize the villains and make villains out of those that you should be proud of. And Comrade Carl, I felt the need to mention this at the beginning of my at the beginning of my submission, that what you are doing, it's much appreciated. You are not in any way forced to hold such spaces, but you do that out of your spirit of patriotism, of which is something that some of us do not question, because you've done that way before it was fashionable, way before tenders, and way before sit in parliament. So that's one quick one that I wanted to squeeze it in, to say you shouldn't tire. We need more men and women like you. But towards the tail end of my submission, there's X-Men who submitted that there's this load shedding go El Rado and somewhere in Soweto. That's well planned. That's well orchestrated. That's why we find ourselves with the likes of Machala Koko being cast out of the system. They did a great job, by the way. They did a great job, Lebo Brian Molefe at ESCOM. Then now we find ourselves here, and the only option that we have is us. Personally, I'm willing to contribute, and I'd like to echo this the message that we can contribute in different ways, even by engagement, even money, even being there physically. But we shouldn't let this one slide. The Busasa one, it created it became news for a few days. Then we've accepted that, and the president got comfortable to say, okay, I can do as I wish, up until okay, because of lack of a better word, but uh, and up until we revolt and say we refuse to be treated like this. Thank you, Carl, Comrade Carl, and everybody on my space, on the space. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much. And I can assure you that I myself, and I know many others here, are not going to tire. We will proceed. At the same time, let us also know that the public protector advocate, Busisiwe Ngubane, is not gone. She's fighting. In fact, we can learn from her fighting spirit about how to proceed and never to give up. I see that my co-moderator, Tebu Khadima, has managed to come back. Tebu, I don't know how much of the discussion you may have missed during the time that you were off the platform, but I do want to give you the mic now to do your input, as I've suggested quite a bit earlier before you were kicked off the platform. Please come in.
Thank you, Mpangazita. I think I just wanted to maybe perhaps bring us back. I really believe that the proposal by Mpofu SC that DIA be really, I think, within that lead, and we use the structure of the DIA. Of course, if their rules permit, then we should rally behind it and use it. And then the input that I would like to at this point in time, beyond us engaging the so-called captains of industry or the so-called white money capitalists in the forms of Johan Rupert, Brian Joffe, and Stephen Kosef et al., I think also people on this platform and beyond, South Africans, every single one of them who's got either a Twitter or a Facebook account, we should flood the Department of Justice in the United States on the basis of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which evidently has been violated, and that we should, as South Africans, demand that they, according to their law, that they must apply their law, which they have passed in this case, which has been violated, as well as the Financial Action Task Force in Paris, that we should flood them with hourly Twitter tweets as well as Facebook or any other medium whereby we really have a program, a rolling mass action on social media on these institutions to have to act, because in that manner, we then increase the pressure on our own law enforcement agencies, the criminal justice system, to do that which is they are legally bound to do. We must bear this in mind. We are not asking the NPA to do any favor. We are not asking the NPA to apply some discretion. They don't have a room for discretion. They must just apply the law as written, and that they too have taken oath of office to uphold and apply the law. That's all we're doing. But engaging the Department of Justice in the United States under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, as well as Financial Action Task Force, I think I propose that it be one of the means, one of the measures we employ to really up the tempo, increase the pressure, so that we must bring to a timely end this regime, which is causing untold harm, whether you're talking about the obliteration of the state-owned enterprises where they are handing themselves to their own chomies. We can give you evidence after evidence in terms of what they have done to really take state-owned companies to their own chomies for absolutely nothing. And that is not just deplorable, it is downright evil on future generations of this nation. So I think that's really what I want us to also just focus on, that it's within our reach, it's within the reach of every single person with a Twitter account in this country who would know that we are in clear and present danger if Ramaphosa continues, if more so he's not held accountable for the alleged acts of criminality where evidence has been adduced, that therefore we are in clear and present danger. And to avert that, let us increase the pressure, rather, even beyond the borders of this country. And those two institutions come to mind that I believe we should flood them with rolling mass action of tweets and Facebook posts. Thank you, Mbangazit.
Thank you, Tebu. And I'm sure that those suggestions, and specifically also the two institutions that you refer to, will become part of that program of action that we are going to develop. I now want to hand over to Hoisan, who has requested the mic. Hoisan?
Yes, how are you? Mine is a quick one. I spoke the last time, and I've got a bit of experience with regards to social media. As everyone should know, that social media is quite powerful, but at the same time, that people should be cautious of the extent of discussions and planning that goes on these platforms, because we know who owns them. It's not locally owned. Every conversation is listened to. Everyone that is participating here is followed, and their profile is thoroughly scrutinized. So, in as much as it's extremely powerful tool to mobilize society and to plan, but it is to be treated with extreme caution. So, yeah, that is my 2 cents in terms of social media. But at the same time, this requires bravery, because the fight at hand is to restore this beautiful country and continent away from the clutches of the imperialist. Because as President Zuma said, whilst he was still the president, that he knew that his downfall was being planned. He mentioned it in isiZulu and said, "Le entshonalanga," that there were people, the so-called captain of industries, who were sitting and thoroughly planning his downfall. And it was not done here. It was done in that land of the native Red Americans. And so, yeah, my 2 cents is that criminal organization with the three-letter word, CIA. They own everything. They control all these media platforms, and because they are obviously on the side of this guy in question, the platform should not be trusted entirely. That's my 2 cents, Carl. Keep up the good work. Everybody should be brave. This is a generational fight. It is for children and future generation. And the gentleman who talked about that Jamnandas should also be targeted in as much as the kidnapper is being targeted. Let this be some sort of a blanket fight against corruption, but as well as against the imperialists who are treating our country and our continent as a continued colony, for them to continue looting our resources that belong to our children. The bigger debate of illicit money flow that is being looted by these people from the entire continent. That is the fight at hand. Thanks to everybody.
Thanks, Khoisan. I think the comments that you made, the caution that you expressed about social media platforms are well taken. But at the same time, we also say that we are not planning to do anything illegal. In fact, all that we want to do is to work for accountability and transparency and to make sure that the law is executed. So there's no need for any of us to be concerned about the legality of what we do, because what we do is indeed legal. And we are trying to deal with those who are behaving in an illegal and in a mafia-like style. Sun Hero, you've requested to speak. Khoisan, can you mute your mic? Thank you. Sun Hero, I'm giving the mic to you.
No, thank you very much, Comrade Carl. Let me post my greetings also to Ntate Tsepo Kadima, Reda Limpofu, our national hero, Spiti Piti, and Professor in absence. Comrade Carl, what I'm only going to raise will be very short, and I also think I posted the message on the Twitter space, where I was requesting that the geographical spread of the program of action committee must be looked into. You see, some of us are not that good when it comes to putting your issues on the media platform, or for people to understand you much better, to express yourself. But we are ground forces, and believe you me when I say to all members within here that the ground is fertile. It is unfortunate that it is only raised today that there should be coordination. It is long overdue that the coordination should have been there, because we are faced with a very serious problem in our country. I heard another comrade, I think I forgot his name, pardon me, when he raised the issue of this load reduction. It's happening everywhere. In the Northwest, it's worse. Look at the capital, our capital city, the Mafikeng, and then you have Rustenburg. You've got the districts like Agamuduru, Malema, where you see load reduction being an issue of the day, and for 4 or 5 hours daily. It's no longer load shedding now. They are now implementing a new strategy to make sure that our people become so desperate in need of electricity that when they hear that the unbundling of Eskom and the privatization of Eskom is taking place, people would be happy. It is only the leadership that we are having here today on the crosshairs that would be able to assist or to bring to light to the members of the public. And the last issue that I want to raise that Advocate Dali spoke about is the issue of the numbers. It is very critical that even as people that I can tell you I've mobilized with Comrade Julius from the days when we were working with the Youth League on the issues of warrant against imperialism. It is a very simple task to organize and to mobilize members. All that people need are resources and coordination. Resources does not necessarily mean money. It means information to be cascaded to the very last person who is on the ground. It means members to have that small piece of lesonja or a slice of bread daily wherever they are. Now, I wanted to put the word out there that Comrade Dali said it quite clearly that you can start with 10 members. They will build up to 20 members, build up to 50 members. The most important thing is to have a central event where members could say, okay, today I'm not going to work, I'm going to join. The others will come and join. Up until now, the numbers are there. I would give an example with the Khoisan community, which have been at the union buildings for quite a very long time. It's been years now. They might be few, but their message being carried across because people that come there on daily basis, they make documentaries about the international members of society. So I'm putting forward that even though I'm not bringing much to the table, I'm saying that let us start as Comrade Dales indicated. The DIA can take over, but we have to have a central event where we don't look for numbers. We look for only one member to start that particular program. It will gradually grow. And believe you me, in the Northwest, we are fed up with the system of dictatorship, where we all can see that nobody has a voice now. Nobody has a voice. It is only, we are now at the mercy of the leadership that is somewhere in KwaZulu-Natal, in Gauteng, that would voice. We don't have anywhere to go in the Northwest. They have totally taken over the media. They have totally taken over the government institutions. It's a dictatorial system in the Northwest province. Because even when you want to say something, believe you me, you will in 10, 15 seconds, feel that people are following you and you will be scared for your life and you will retreat. That is how we are all living now in South Africa. And it's there. Everybody can see that it is happening. It is unfortunate that we have never had any coordination for us to come and support the programs that will free all South Africans. Thank you.
Thank you, Saniro. I'm going to immediately go over to Ayanda Meritlana, who is requested for the mic. And then I need a little bit of guidance from my co-moderator, Tebu. We are now at 7:45. I know that these Twitter spaces can go on forever, but what I would like to suggest is that we continue to have inputs from those who have requested to speak, and there are many of you who've done so, until 8 o'clock. Then I'm going to give an opportunity for a short input again by Advocate Poffo, and after that, Tebu, and then myself will wind it up, but that we try to be finished with this Twitter space not later than 8:15, at the very latest 8:30. If that is okay, and if no one objects to that, then I'm going to proceed now to give the mic to Ayanda. Ayanda?
Cool. Thank you very much, Carl, and happy birthday to your daughter, man.
Thank you. That was yesterday, but we spent a lovely day together. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you to your co-host, the People's Advocate Poffo, and the speakers, the fellow listeners. I can hear the advocate clearly there, giving us the direction that we need to focus on the admitted crimes. And I really, really appreciate his inputs in actually dissecting and explaining on how to approach this strategy. However, I just need to put it out that we need to be careful about way. There is a movement that seeks to suggest that they will actually try to discredit Mr. Arthur Fraser. Now, they will ask him, did you use any state resources to obtain your evidence? And then if the answer is yes, then it means Therefore, the man is guilty because he laid the charges out of office in his own private space. So he used the state resources to obtain all the evidence that he got against the president. Then his evidence will collapse and they will discredit it in that form. So I just need to advocate in whatever response that he will make, that to actually maybe give us a clarity on that. Can that be that they can say the state resources were used by Arthur Fraser on his evidence? And number two,
Ayanda, sorry to interrupt you.
Yes,
we will ask Advocate Poffo to comment, but at the same time, here, there's been no indication of any abuse of state resources. And
Absolutely.
the merit of the case stand on its own legs, regardless of who the person is who brought the case. I think that point should just be made. But my apologies for interrupting you.
All right, thank you very much. And then number two would be, can a person who is a member of parliament be a director of any private company? And there was something that I read earlier where it says, yes, they can be. They can be a director of any private company, especially if that person has declared that they are involved in that specific business. And in fact, that's what this president said in that conference, that I have declared this. So I need whatever formation that will be made from this platform to actually look into that. And I would like the advocate to actually also answer into this. Can they use this against Arthur Fraser's complaint to say he was involved in business? Section 96 doesn't apply necessarily in this case, simply because the man declared his businesses. So to say, he's clear on that. So that's what I wanted to get. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I won't be long.
Thank you. When I give an opportunity to Advocate Poffo right at the end, once we've gone through a number more of people who have requested to speak, I'm sure he will come back to those issues that you've raised. I'm handing over to Mia, who have requested to speak. Mia? Mia, if you're trying to speak, your mic is muted. We can't hear you. Okay, Mia's not responding. Okay, Mia,
Hi.
please proceed.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to be very brief, given that I'm not very well informed insofar as all the political stuff that goes on. But I think I've got two questions. Firstly, I'd like to know when that Zuma must fall march happened. Was it necessary to do or a lot of what Mr. Poffo has put forward? I don't know, organizing, which sounded to me like it needed some documentation and so forth before that whole march took place. That's my first question. And my second question is off the back of that, is that it's because it's making me question, why are we needing to do all of that before we can really just organize and move ahead and set, whether it's setting a date or time where there's some sort of mobilization where we sort of stand up as we the people do not want this person in power anymore. And then the second thing is, I do understand that in politics, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the background that a lot of the public is not privy to. So with that said, I think it goes without saying that the internal battles that take place within the ANC and all the political space should be put aside, and anybody that is for the well-being of the country, its people, and its future should step forward and fall in line as what was purported to be happening when everybody was doing the Zuma must fall march. So I don't know if my questions were clear. Actually, yeah, the second was more of a request. The first was more of a question. Why has there been such a delay? And like it seems like we need to do some procedural documentation and all of that. Was that necessary when everybody came together and said, let's get Zuma out? Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. I think your points are well taken, while at the same time, let us also acknowledge that there was a lot of organization and international funding that were channeled towards the Zuma Must Go campaign, and Save South Africa was funded by huge amounts of money from the international community, from certain structures, organizations, the Open Society Foundation of George Soros, etc., etc. So let us not fool ourselves about the resources and planning that went into what may have looked like somewhat more spontaneous responses, which were very carefully and well orchestrated. Now, we agree that we need to move as fast as possible. I think we agree also that we will move with this coordinating committee as quickly as possible, but at the same time, let us also make sure that on an organizational level, we have our act properly together. I want to hand over to True Talk, who is requested to speak. True Talk is not responding. I'm giving to Sekelo Gumede. Sekelo, I see you've raised your hand in addition to asking to speak.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Carl, and thank you to everyone who joined the space. I just have a few very quick, brief input. First of all, I just want to speak to the spirit of coordination and unity, which I believe this is now, where we are in the country, where we need to look beyond our political affiliation and background. I think this has been spoken about, and I want to emphasize that point because it is a very important point that we need as South Africans to unite. I mean, if you look at our leaders and some of the political parties and organizations, that have done great work, whether it's be EFF, whether it's be Gaten McKenzie, whether it's Operation Tutula, whatever the case may be, there are leaders in these organizations who are Black leaders. And it feels to me like we mostly focus on what we disagree on, as opposed to saying, yes, we are not friends, we may not agree on everything, and we will never agree on everything. But there are key things that we should be pinpointing and saying, this is where we do not differ, and this is where our focus should be, our energy and unity should be. I mean, white people are not friends. Not all white people are friends, but there are certain things that they do not compromise. There are certain things that they agree on and not compromise. And I want to challenge our leaders here from all forms of organization and say, as Black people, I mean, we pull each other from social media and so on, Operation Tutula versus EFF, this and that. I mean, the fundamental things that we agree on are the things that we should be focusing on. What is at the center of what we talk about here is our country, is a future for our country. It doesn't matter whether we're friends or not, and we shouldn't be friends. And I wanna emphasize at this point because it is very important in so far as to say, yes, this Ramaphosa saga for me is a symptom of a deeper problem that we should be focusing on as a country. We have a problem of lawlessness. We have a problem of corruption. We have a problem of land in this country. I mean, it is really a shame that Section 25 of the Constitution
was never amended. But if you look at the parliamentary, the parliament and the parties that are there, majority of them are our own people, black people. It speaks to a deeper problem, a deeper conversation that we need to have beyond the Ramaphosa saga. And that is why I'm challenging all of us to say, let us swallow our pride, as a nation. And I'm thankful of these leaders who brought us here, because if you even look at the Twitter space that is here, I mean, the conversations that we're having here does not matter which political party you're coming from. It really doesn't. We have a problem at hand that we all are concerned about. We all are concerned about accountability in our country. We all are concerned about our government and all the shenanigans that are going on. Everyone is concerned. But I think in my last point is to say, I hope this is a new culture that we create, because I want to be part of it. I choose not to be associated or to be seen, or to be viewed from political lens, but I want to be viewed as a South African who wants to make it different in this country. I don't care who I work with, but I want to work with genuine people who want to see a difference in this country. And I hope what we are doing here is a new culture of unity, a culture of saying, what South Africa do we want to see? It's not Ramaphosa who's going to tell us what South Africa we want to see. It's not ANC, it's not EFF, but it is South Africans. Sorry. It is South Africans, all of us. We are the ones who are going to say this is a country that we want to see. And the basic common that we agree on are the things that we should be focusing on. We won't agree on 100 things, but there's 2-3 things that we should be targeting and saying, as South Africans, as black people, this is what we agree on, bringing all other races as well. But I think the reason why I'm emphasizing on our color, it's because we are the most marginalized people in this country that, for many, many years, no one really care about the future of this black nation. But if we unite, swallow our pride, come together and say, 1, 2, 3.
Absolutely right. This is not an ANC thing. It is not a specific political party thing. It's about the concern of truly concerned South Africans across the board. And a significant part of that process must also be the building of black unity and African unity amongst all of us. I'm going to hand over to Roni, and after Roni, I'm going to give to Siepe. And then I'm going to ask Advocate Poffo to come back in, give us a response to the inputs that we have received, and then also to Tebu Khatima. Tebu, I'm not sure whether you're still able to come back. I see your mic is again cancelled, but I hope that it will be possible that we can also gain from your wisdom once we've asked Advocate Poffo to come in. Now I'm giving the mic to Ronnie.
Good evening, Carl. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
Hello.
But you must unmute your mic, please, Ronnie. Thanks.
Yeah, my mic is on mute.
We can hear you. Please proceed.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone on the space. Good evening to, let me first acknowledge and say halala to the people's advocating Poffo for his case being thrown out the window. He's been put in the bin. That's where it belongs. So yeah, we say halala to that.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see that. And I think these spaces are quite important, very, very, very important for us to come together and share ideas and see how we can move forward. And what I have learned from this evening spaces is that there is some form of coordination to say this is a plan of action, to say this is how we must proceed. This is what we must do. Because I think one of the things that, unfortunately for us, we lack is that we don't have any formations when it comes to how to tackle certain issues. You've got your AfriForum, who are always ready with resources, prepared. If white people need a university, they can gather and contribute.
Sorry, Ronnie.
and
Comrade Dali, can you mute your mic, please? Thank you. Ronnie, you can proceed. Sorry to interrupt
so
you.
yeah, sorry, it's fine. As I was saying, we need some form of organizational structure pertaining to this particular vision and aim. And the vision and aim is, how do we get the president? How do we get him out of the way? How do we remove him? Not because we hate him, but because he's broken the law. And not just has he broken the law. I think the allegations are so serious, but what also makes it more important for us to remove him is he has admitted, and it looks to me as if in his admittance he's rather thinking that he's hoodwinking people or he's being clever, but he doesn't realize that he's actually digging a hole for himself. So when he goes to Polokwane and he says, and we've got it on tape, I've got it on tape, and he says, I'm a trader, I trade in cattle. That's admitting that, okay, you are doing private business whilst you are in office. Maybe advocating Poffo can elaborate the legality of a president having a private business. I don't know too much about it. I'm trying to read on it. And then he also goes on to say the money they are talking about is not the amount. So he's admitting again that there was some money. It might not be 4 million, but there was some money. So he's admitted to two serious allegations. That's just one side. And if you were to add the kidnapping and the torturing and the cross-border, then you are bringing it to another level altogether, if that can be proved. But for now, I think we must zoom in on these two that he has admitted to. And then we form some sort of organization which we want to do. And it must be something where resources must come in. We must get serious if we want to get serious. If contribution is needed, I know it's difficult out there. It's not easy. Economy is in doldrums, foods are skyrocketing. But if we want to get serious, we must get serious. If we need to contribute, we must get serious and contribute and focus on these two. There's also another third element. I think Mr. Kadima expounded on it. When a crime is committed in the US dollars, it becomes a federal US crime. So perhaps maybe we can also approach the US embassy and say we want to lay a charge because this is what has taken place. We can also add that to the first phase. Maybe advocating Poffo can also expound on that. And let's get serious and get this thing going. It's about a president who has broken his oath of office. His litany of things that he's done. I don't know one thing that President Cyril has done for Black people since 2018. I don't know. What I know is unemployment is off the roof. Load shedding is on steroids. Everything is just bizarre. The only people benefiting are the people that most probably funded him, his white business comrades. They are the ones benefiting, and the political elites and their families and cronies, they are the ones benefiting. But the ordinary people on the ground, it's tough. People are crying. It's not easy. So let's form this formation. Let's gather and let's get serious and take it forward and march on, because it's very critical that we do that. If we don't, because I don't think the NPA, the police, the Hawks, the parliament, I don't think they're going to do anything to him, because the settler barons, this is their man, and they're going to make sure that they're going to use the media to hoodwink gullible natives. Already, people are questioning after Fraser. Some are questioning the timing. It was ANC politics. It's neither here nor there. There's serious allegations. He has admitted to some of them. Let's zoom in on that and see how we can take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. Can I please ask participants to try and avoid repeating some of the things that we have already at length discussed? I'm giving the last speaker to Sizwe Ngobo, and after that, I'm going to hand over to Advocate Poffo to do his final input, and hopefully Tebu Khadima will also be able to participate. Sizwe.
Thank you very much, Carl. How are you?
I'm well.
Can you hear me?
Okay,
thank you very much.
Please proceed.
Okay. I'd like to emphasize a few things here. We're dealing with a crook here, and we mustn't be civil about it. Because Cyril has bought media, he has also bought judiciary, he has bought NGOs, and also the MPs. So there's no accountability for Cyril in this country. He'll do whatever he wants to do, and no one can say anything. And I think for you to create this space is very important, where we can discuss these matters. As for NGOs or a civil society, we need to have our own for Black people that will be always discussing issues relating to any injustices for Black people. Yeah. So in this matter, I think we should all be ready to put in the funds and create a time to the event. And make sure that he accounts for this for his sins. From day one, Cyril paid cages in Nazareth. That was where it all started, because Cyril is a criminal from day one. I don't know why are people surprised that he has done this now, he has done that. No, from day one, Cyril started this. So can we please, we as Black people, start making him count, and his fellow white men that are funding him. If they want to keep him, that is fine. It's their business. So we should deal with them. If they want to keep him, they must suffer for keeping Cyril. That's what should happen, Carl, because they own businesses. Last year, I think nice thing happened there by the loot.
Okay, Sizwe has disappeared. Sizwe, are you still there? Unfortunately, we've lost Sizwe. I now want to move over to Advocate Poffo and give him an opportunity to...
Comrade Carl,
yes, Comrade Ali?
can I put up a case? There's Kaba, I think he was the last speaker. That we have not, so because we have lost Caesar, maybe Kaba can come in very quickly, and then I'll wrap up.
I'm trying to find Kaba. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've got Kaba. I'll give the speaker to him, and then we can proceed with you. The mic is yours, Kaba.
Thank you very much, Advocate Daddy. And greetings to everyone and the host. It's actually I'm happy that the advocate asked me to come through, because the question really was I have is for him, as somebody that knows a lot about the constitution and law. When we talk about all these things, there's a lot of changes that took place in the 90s. I just wanted our advocate to speak on this. One of the changes, obviously, being the constitution, in that there was a placement of the constitution in for the black rule. Really, for me, when I look at it, I know it was in preparation for the black rule, but as well for the changes that black people might want to see in with the passing of time, which is where we are now. When I look at the constitution, I know it had a lot in mind in a lot of changes that people would request for, and later on in life when they discovered what really was going on. When when we look at the constitution, we know that it's meant to provide a good separation of powers for accountability, but when I look at the judiciary system, I find that everything became a constitutional democracy for a reason, to take away the power from people. As far as I'm concerned, and and that was done in such a way that everything then is based on the judges or the judicial system making the final call, and because most of the judges were present in the apartheid system, I just want Advocate Dali to explain how then do we come out of anything political that we may succeed in achieving if at the end of the day it is up to the judges to make any decision which probably will be pro-apartheid or will be pro-status quo, and also looking into the fact that in the separation of powers, most of the judges or some of the judges, or to remove a judge, you need 2/3 majority plus the JSC agreeing, and the JSC being people who were mostly in the judicial system as well. So that means it's impossible to have them accountable, or remove people that are pro-apartheid or that were installed by an apartheid system. So how then can we have political solutions around this? How can we go around this? I just wanted Advocate Dali to explain this for us and clarify a way around it, because we do have statements that are sealed by a judiciary system. So how do we know that when you go to court, Advocate, you are not facing judges that were bought and judges that will always have a decision made in favor of the president? So maybe speak on that for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaba. I'm handing over to Advocate Poffo, and then we will proceed from there. Comrade Ali.
Yes, thank you very much, Comrade Carl. If I may quickly just deal with Kaba's point, I think we must request Comrade Carl to have a space on that issue. That's a very important and serious issue, which I think requires a discussion on its own, and we can find a way of how to shape it. I'll be prepared to come and assist with that, about the system that we have, and how it can be improved or amended or whatever. The only thing I can say at this stage, Kaba, is that in political theory or political mobilization, for now, because we have a specific issue, we have to deal with what we have. This is the current situation. To change the situation is important, but it will take years and years to be achieved. But the most important thing is that we work with what we have. This is what we did. We did under apartheid. I mean, we didn't want all the Group Areas Act and all sorts of things, but we had to work within that system in order to change it, so to speak. Otherwise, if we were going to wait for some miracle to happen, then we were never going to start. Yeah. So, but the short answer is that in theory, there's nothing wrong with a constitutional democracy and a justiciable Bill of Rights if the judiciary is truly independent. And so let's leave it at that for now. But whether this one is independent or not is a question that we can debate at that time when we have that space. Comrade Carl, can you please take note of that, and maybe we can have a discussion on that space. I mean, on
We
that.
definitely will have a space on that. A
Yeah.
very good idea.
Okay. Right. Now, coming back to the topic of the day, I think that the inputs have been very good, but I just want to start. You'll forgive me, Comrade Carl. We need to give leadership on some of these things, even at the beginning. I think we must immediately, I think it was Khoisan who said we must be cautious and because this something like this is I mean, you can almost put money that this thing is infiltrated by all sorts of people, because it's a public space, as it should be. It's like if you had a meeting in the park, you can't dictate who's going to come there because you called it a public meeting. So that's why I was proposing this idea of a committee, or whatever you call it, a steering committee, because those people can then do all the planning physically somewhere and then come and report to us. And then we have another way of people joining or enlisting themselves. So people must be careful. So I think we have to put X-Men, we have to put you into order. We cannot have discussions about going to people's houses and all that. That's wrong. I think we should, if we want to march to anybody's who holds an office, we have to march to their office, because once you start, activities that are not going to be within the law, then you'll be inviting the repression and labeling. So I thought that we must put those kinds of statements out there. Yeah. As Comrade Carl was saying, everything we're saying here is completely lawful and legal. There's no difference between saying Zuma must go and saying Ramaphosa must go. If it's treasonable to say Ramaphosa must go, then it should have been treasonable to say Zuma must go, or Mbeki must go, or whoever. Then it means all of us were fighting not for a democracy, because we should be able to say anyone must go. Whether you're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. That's what the democracy is all about. So, and that takes me, I think, to an issue that was raised by Mia. Mia, I'm glad you spoke, because the women's voice has been very scarce in this space. I think it's a misunderstanding. You can't have a public action that is just unplanned by anybody. Well, I suppose you can, but it will be directionless and it will be short-lived. If you want to have something that is sustainable and directed, you have to have planning, and that goes without saying. So please don't be fooled that the so-called Zuma must fall march happened. Just people woke up one day and decided to go to Pretoria and say Zuma must fall. No, it doesn't work like that. There's a lot of planning. There was that outfit of Siepe and I think South Africa First, or whatever, or Save South Africa, something like that.
Yeah, Save South Africa.
Yes, Save South Africa. Those were the people who did what we are talking about, the coordination of the Zuma must fall thing. And then they made an appeal to society. You will remember that they were on television. They had all those scarves with the flag and all that. And I think they even had certain T-shirts. But there was visible leadership. There were people who were speaking for that organization. Siepe was the face of it, and there were various others. Yeah, so it doesn't work like that. You can't just wake up and say Zuma must fall or whoever must fall. You have to have serious planning. The reason why we're talking about cutting some of the administration, for example, the idea came that we use the DIA because it's already there. That will save us of wasting another week trying to register something or whatever. So you look for those shortcuts, but you can't just You can, I mean, somebody had to say on such and such a date we're going to go to Pretoria. Otherwise, others would have gone on Monday, others on Tuesday, others on Wednesday, and then the whole thing would have just been a shambles. Right. So let's then talk about something that I think is very important, which was raised by Tebu, and I think it was Siepe and somebody else. I'm just trying to. Moya Khabo, I think, also raised this. This is about some of the actions that can be taken immediately. That's why I was saying, if we raise money, any money, I mean, if I can take out 100 Rand and someone else puts 200 Rand, then we say, okay, what have we got? We have 10,000 Rand or we have 500,000 Rand or whatever. Then that is what will determine what kind of action you can take. You understand? So the issue is we must just commit to taking some action. So let me give you an example. If we have 500,000 Rand, we can say the 3 or 4 of the leadership people must go to Namibia. We can say, the leaders of the political parties, the parties that have been active in this thing has been ATM, UDM, and the EFF, just for example. There might be others. We say, okay, you do the political stuff in parliament, but we also want you to go to the Namibian parliament, for argument's sake. And then we buy them tickets to go there. And then they go there and they go and demand a meeting with the president or whatever. But if you don't have that money, you have 20 Rand, then you take the 20 Rand and you go to the Namibian embassy and then give that message there. You understand? So what determines the type of action you're going to take will be determined by your resources. We can say, as Tebu was saying, we go and say this to the Americans about the dollar-based crimes, or we can go to the American embassy here in Pretoria or wherever it is, in Sandton. So the issue is just to commit to action. What kind of action is determined by and you might have to do something this week, but if you have resources, you can do 10 things on the same day. You can have someone flying to Paris, another one flying to the US, another one flying to Windhoek, another one marching to the embassy, all at the same time. The idea is to have that's why it's called a movement. The movement must be uncontrollable pressure on, and that cannot be ignored. And people must just must be forced to respond. If we're saying we're marching to the union buildings, somebody must be there, accept a memorandum and give us an answer, or we tell them we'll be back in 10 days or whatever. So we can't plan those kinds of things in this thing, in a space. Yeah, those things must be planned by a group of people that we will entrust with that role, and then they come, but they must come to us and announce or go on radio or whatever. It's mobilization is not difficult. It's you just need to have a system and a cause and something that you have to mobilize society around. Yeah. Okay. The other thing is this thing Stella spoke about, the political. We must be honest. It can be, when we say something cuts across political affiliations, it does not mean it's not political. At least I don't know, we can speak for ourselves. I'm speaking for myself. For me, this thing is very political. So I make no bones about it. But the point I'm making is that it's not a party political thing. It's not something that must consign to the RET faction of the ANC or the EFF or this ATM or whatever. It must cut across people who have no political affiliation, who are just ordinary South Africans, who are churchgoers or whatever, business people who just want a president who doesn't lie to them. They don't have to belong to anything. They must just, that's all you need really to be, is just to be concerned. And that's why we say it must cut across. But we must not make promises that are not going to materialize. something that is non-sectarian. That's really the right word. It must be non-sectarian in the sense that you don't have to affiliate and be a card-carrying member of anything. But it doesn't mean that it's apolitical or it's just like a tea party. It's not. It's action to remove a political head from a political office, and therefore, to that extent, it's political. Just as the Zuma must fall thing was political, just like anything is, if you march to your local mayor because they're not delivering, that's political, but it's not subversive. It's just a something that you have a right to do. Right now, the Ayanda spoke about the just clarity on the legalities. Yes, it's true that if you go to court and you have the section 35.5 of the Constitution, which says that you may not use illegally obtained evidence. But that's something down the line, even if it ever arises, it will arise when there's a court case. You can't now preempt the question as to how Arthur Fraser got that information. For now, and the easiest way is what I was saying earlier. Assume for a minute he got it from abusing state resources. Fine, then he must go to jail for that or whatever. I don't care. But what has that got to do with the fact that there were dollars sitting in the president's house and there were people tortured there, and the money was not reported and tax was possibly not paid? So we must separate this thing, because otherwise we're going to be waylaid by the Tulimaton sellers and Lindiwemas Bukos of this world about how bad Arthur Fraser is. We must say, yeah, okay, fine, he's bad. Then he must have his own court case next door. But in the other court room, there must be Ramaphosa answering for his own sins. Okay. So that's the issue. But also, that's something that the police will be able to deal with. A whistleblower, the one of the worst things, even forget about the criminal thing, just people always do this. You want to victimize the whistleblower. So in a workplace, you'll be saying, no, my boss stole a check or whatever. And then you're going to be saying, no, but that's because of this and that. The issue is you must investigate the allegation itself. You might also have to investigate the bona fides of the whistleblower at a later stage. So let's not be distracted there. The other thing is Section 96.2. Yes, Section 96.2 has no qualification, and I think it was Ronnie who asked that question. Section 96.2 doesn't say that if you are a member of the cabinet, and the president is a member of the cabinet, you are not allowed to engage in any other paid work. Full stop. Doesn't say you are not allowed to engage in paid work if you declare. No, you must not be involved in other paid work. That's it. It's the Constitution, and the Constitution cannot be qualified by any other law. It's the supreme law of the land. So that issue is going to have to be determined on the facts and on the interpretation. Is what Ramaphosa has admitted to, does it amount to the wording of the Constitution? And remember, the Constitution must be interpreted liberally and in the interest of the liberty of citizens and so on. There are various, I don't want to get into legalese here, but all I can say is that question is a question of interpretation as to whether he breached that section. Then the other subsections of Section 96 as well about not exposing yourself to a situation where you might have a conflict of interest as between your personal and public duties. That's the one that we're invoking in relation to his suspension of the public protector, for example. And those are not, and that section is it's liberal in its own wording. It says, unlike you and I, who must not have maybe a normal conflict, there's a special conflict of interest which is defined for cabinet members, and they are not supposed to expose themselves to something that may amount to a risk of conflict. So you don't, the risk is enough if you are a cabinet member for you to be found to have breached Section 96(2). And so on. Yeah. So I have no doubt about that. There's a prima facie case, or much more than that, on all the things that we've already discussed. Whether it's in Parliament about breaching the Constitution, or breaching his oath of office, or whether it's in the criminal justice system about not paying tax or not reporting and right up to the kidnapping and the more serious crimes. Yeah, I think I've covered some of the things that were raised. Just give me 1 second, Comrade Carl. Yeah, I think that in closing, I just want to say this: that we have to go back to what Professor Siepe was saying. What's actually wrong with this picture of Palapal? It is that it offends firstly, a person who occupies, when we entrust someone with an office called the president, that office comes with certain responsibilities. You know, it's not a joke that we have something called the inauguration, and at the inauguration, a person stands up in front of the entire country, in front of the Chief Justice, raises their right hand, and reads out that oath of office. And so help me God. They are committing themselves to the nation that they will do those things that are in that oath of office. And I'm inviting you, in your own time, find the Constitution, go to the section at the back, it's in one of the schedules, and just read out the oath of office of the president, or play a recording of when he was taking his oath of office, and listen carefully to what he committed himself to respect the Constitution, respect the law, the best of his ability, to obey the laws of the Republic, and so on and so on and so on. And then just check that against what has happened. Has the stuff that has happened has it stuck to that oath of office? If the answer is no, then he must go for that reason alone. If the answer is yes, then he must stay. You know, but it must be. That doesn't mean that cannot be tested by Parliament. There's at least a prima facie case for him to answer. In other words, there should be an impeachment process. Whether he will win or lose at the end of it, that's fine. That's we can't tell. Similarly, when you're saying he must be charged, you don't mean he must go to prison. He must be charged, go to court. If he wins the case, he wins the case, that's fine. But is there enough now for him to be charged? Obviously, yes. The question is, that's not even a question. But you can't preempt what will happen. There might be some explanation. Maybe the money was brought, by some, I don't know, some person the day before and said, just keep this for one night. I don't know. There might be something we don't know. There might be some defense. But he should be put to that defense. That's, when we say someone must be charged, that's what we mean. We don't mean he's guilty. We just mean that there's enough for him to answer. He has a case to answer in simple words. So those are the issues we must inspect. And one doesn't have to be a lawyer to understand those issues. Issues of the values of our Constitution, equality before the law. If it was, if it's Carl Niehaus, why can he be zapped in front of a prison just because he's not wearing a mask or whatever? Nobody says, no, we're going to investigate this for 6 months. So everyone must be treated in the same way. Human dignity. Those are the values of our Constitution. Human dignity means what? It means that you cannot take somebody and strap them with a piece of string or whatever it is, and ask them questions about money in some bedroom in the president's farm. You can't do that in a democracy. That's you can't take a domestic worker and force them to tell you all sorts of things. Even if they've taken your money, you can't take the law into your own hands. You must go to the police. So those are the values. Transparency we've spoken about, accountability we've spoken about, Ubuntu. Those are just some of the values that anybody can understand. And you just have to say, have these been breached in this case? If it is so, then he has not lived up to his oath of office. So, and that's what it's about. It's about, in Parliament, it's not about crime. It's about ethics. That's why it's called the Executive Ethics Members Act. There are certain things which you are not allowed to do when you are a member of parliament or a member of the cabinet or the president. And ethics means exactly that. What it means the things that you do when nobody's looking, basically. So you can come and tell us about renewal and all sorts of nice things and Tumamina this, Tumamina that. And then when it's and you say we must report crimes and so on. But when it's your money, now you start to change and start torturing people. So that's lack of ethics in leadership. Because you do something because you think you're not going to get caught. If you are ethical, you must do the right thing when no one is looking and no one will ever know about it. Yeah. So the issues for me are really simple. It's a question of finding a mechanism for action and demanding answers and making sure that the issue doesn't die, because that's the enemy here is the media, is all the forces that are going to make sure that this story dies a natural death. And that's why it's important to have a structure and an organization so that the issue doesn't die. We take it to its logical conclusions and move it until answers are given. If Mr. Ramaphosa is innocent, he might be, I don't know. Then he must give the answers and explain the whole misunderstanding. No, there's no such thing. There was no money. Actually, all this was just an imagination of Mr. Fraser. Fine, but he must be put to answer to those things. Thank you, Comrade Khan.
Thank you, Comrade Ali, and thanks for the very comprehensive response that you've given us. I'm glad to see that my co-moderator, Tebu Khadima, has managed to come back onto the platform. Tebu has promised I'm going to give you an opportunity, and then I will wind up this discussion. Tebu, over to you.
Bangazita, it has been a very valuable evening. I think our country is going to change for the better following tonight's discourse. One can only remain a prisoner of hope that Cyril Ramaphosa will tonight have the biblical vision of Mene Mene Tekel. The writing is on the wall. He has been put on the scales and has been found wanting. And may he have the eyes to read the writing on the wall and therefore vacate that sacred office of the president without further delay, lest this whole country implode. We can only pray that he does not have the curse of Samson, where he brought the whole temple, and in this case, Ramaphosa can bring the whole country, the whole republic. This mighty ship of state will sink with that one torpedo from Cyril Ramaphosa's alleged acts of, alleged crimes and the things that he has been accused of. So let's remain prisoners of hope, but at the same time, let us not tire. Let us continue to push so that the republic can be saved from total ruin. But it has been very, very valuable, and I think gratitude goes to the valuable input by Poffo SC, Professor Siepe, but also the very many listeners who participated here, because it appears that we have direction and it is in the right direction where we are heading. Thank you.
Thank you to Tebu Khadima, my co-moderator. I want to thank everyone who participated in what was not just a talk shop tonight, but in fact, that we are coming up with practical suggestions on how to deal with this terrible challenge that our country is faced with. What we will do in the process going forward now is, yes, we will create a coordinating committee. As Advocate Poffo said, things have to be planned. They don't just happen on a spontaneous basis. I will myself, together with Tebu Khadima and also together with Democracy in Action, work together to pull that committee together and to start working on a program of action, and also, as we agreed, a coherent document of our demands. We will not be discussing all of those issues in detail at the next platform, which is going to be the Twitter Spaces conversation on the 22nd of June. But we will give a report back with clear plans, with clear dates, with a program of mobilization. At the same time, we will then continue to coordinate with other structures within society, civil society organizations, churches, the broad spectrum of concerned South African citizenry. As Advocate Poffo said, this is a deeply political matter, but it is not a partisan party political matter, and we will treat it as such. The way forward for us now is to make sure that more people will participate, not just in this Twitter Space platform, but in the broad mobilization, so that we succeed in our objective, that there must be accountability and there must be transparency, and that President Ramaphosa must be charged and must be kept accountable. That is the clear objective that we have set for ourselves. What will be happening in the next couple of days in terms of these Twitter Spaces are as follows. As I've already indicated, on the 22nd of June, we will have the Public Protector, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, as our guest. But of course, we will also at the same time present this program of action, present the committee that has been pulled together, and we will work from there to use not only this Twitter Space, but also many other platforms as a way of mobilization. We will make sure that we bring out into the streets, mobilized to go to the National Prosecuting Authority to deal with all those various areas of concern that you as participants in this Twitter Space have so clearly articulated and addressed them. I want to conclude. I thank Advocate Poffo for the very extensive inputs that he has given us tonight. He lived up to the name that he has as the People's Advocate. I also want to thank Professor Siepe for his invaluable input, not just in the work that he did tonight with us in this discussion, but also for the writings that contributes greatly to the public discourse in South Africa. I thank again Tebu Khadima as my co-moderator. And finally, as always, I thank you as the participants in this space conversation of ours. Without you and without the time that you are prepared to dedicate to this conversation, and without the commitment that you've expressed, none of this will have any potential to succeed. So thank you very much. I also thank your families and your children, and especially you as fathers who are with us tonight, for the sacrifice that you've made for some of the time that you could have spent with your children tonight that you dedicated it to this Twitter space conversation. Someone said to me this afternoon, but why are you talking about these things on Father's Day? And my response was, I do not only do this as a political animal, I do it also as a father, because I want my country to succeed. And I do not want to have thugs taking our country over and destroying also the future of my children. And with those words, I want to play out of another song by Nkwenka. I played one of his songs where he was dealing with the issues around President Cyril Ramaphosa, and now I'm playing out with another song of Nkwenka. And with that, I say good night, and once again, thank you so much for all of you, for your invaluable inputs, and for the progress that we've registered tonight to move forward on this great project of making our nation succeed and ridding it from those that want to destroy it and who want to be the agents of white monopoly capital. Good night, and here comes the song.
Inyone mhlophe kwakhe ngelanda ephula amaphuzu zamazama umhlaba ikanyamba ngedizele phezulu nyakasibhakabhaka ubhakazitha umhlophe kwawundaba ezitha umshawe monopoly capital langishisa babale kunqobo kundisise ubaba shapha abazonina imthandela bemasha kanatana ubhakazitha imthandela kufa xomanana ubhakazitha imthandela umhlaba ufinyelelisa abantu abamnyama umhlophe kwawundaba ezitha imthandela ukukhuthaza iradical economic transformation wangajivala kandi masumafeni kwenjebe soja umakayibona nokulimthola esibonga amasenza amakhulu badlula abaneka bayibona umbulali obulali apartheid ngamazwi umthetho wendaba walombuso wedolobha eSouth Africa kwidemocracy isibambo sokuthwele house maturiza isirele akuziyama bahleka abafayithini kunokwana kini bekuyofaka umkontesezo yomfumithimbi umshawo capitalism umshawo mapapeta kwathamelisi wekwezesitele boshi umshawo monopoly capital.
Good night.
It's almost got Niehaus
on the 22nd of June on Wednesday, 7 o'clock. Good night.
It's almost got Niehaus. Inyone mhlophe kwanje ngelanda ebhula amaphiwa zamazama umhlaba inkanyamba endizele phezulu nyakasibhakabhaka umshawe wathi monopoly capital ilanga lishisa babaleko ngqowa kulezi senkulu baqesha phansi wedaba zonina imthandela phethu mahashula kanacala umpangazitha imthandela phethu viva nqamalala umpangazitha imthandela phethu umnotho nomhlaba ufinyelele ezandleni zabantu abamnyama umhlophe kwawundaba ezitha imthande ngokutusa nokukhuthaza iradical economic transformation wangadlikebala khali Niehaus umafele mpinje ngesoja uma kade bona ehollywood olesihonga amazikahle amabhunu obandlulula yabaleka mayimbona umbulali wabulale apartheid ngamazwi isibongo sika Niehaus. Isibongo sika Niehaus. Inyone mhlophe kwanje ngelanda ebhula amaphiwa zamazama umhlaba inkanyamba endizele phezulu nyakasibhakabhaka umshawe wathi monopoly capital ilanga lishisa babaleko ngqowa kulezi senkulu baqesha phansi wedaba zonina imthandela phethu mahashula kanacala umpangazitha imthandela phethu viva nqamalala umpangazitha imthandela phethu umnotho nomhlaba ufinyelele ezandleni zabantu abamnyama umhlophe kwawundaba ezitha imthande ngokutusa nokukhuthaza iradical economic transformation wangadlikebala khali Niehaus umafele mpinje ngesoja